Oh, this is 6 hours old already?
Guys, yeah.
Your library?
Monday, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah, but now it's not like that anymore. Yeah, well,
I mean, there's a ton
I'm looking if you want to.
I did not even realize it was that hard.
aliens, like,
Yeah.
because we went to their second year. Obviously, it's what it is.
Well, Sharon, ask her how you turn this damn thing off.
Yeah. Well, right now. They're out right now. And they have very square. When they're out right now, seems to be. There's not much going on.
Hi folks, we're going to get started in 1 minute. Just let's do a little house.
What she said? Yeah, what she said. Well, me, so why not? Huh?
Why didn't you tell me about this account?
I just found out.
Good evening, everybody. I would like to call the regular meeting of the Hamilton Township Council to order. This meeting is being held with the benefit of public notice as required by the Open Public Meetings Act. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Schirmer. Here. Mr. Mastrangelo.
Here.
Mr. Carabelli.
Here.
Mr. Ty.
Here.
Mr. Moore.
Here. Seeing 5 council members present, a quorum has been met. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and join us in the salute to the flag and remain standing for the invocation.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, please give this council the guidance, wisdom, courage, knowledge for what's right and proper for the residents of Hamilton Township. Please protect our men and women in the military and also our first responders. Amen.
Okay, so the first item up for discussion, and I see Ms. Fiora here, is we invited Carrie Fiora, who's the director of our, for lack of better term, sewer plant or water pollution control plant. And so Ms. Fiora, just if you'd like to come up to the podium a little bit. Good evening, thank you for coming in. Could you just make sure that microphone is on? I just want to make sure everybody can.
Red light should be on.
Hello?
Now we hear you. So, Ms. Fu, just for some people in the audience might not know who you are, if you can just give a little bit of your background as the director for the department and your experience here in Hamilton.
Okay, should I face you?
You can kind of do a combination if you'd like.
Good evening. I'm the director over at WPC over in Hudson Avenue. I've been there about a year and a half as director.
And it's probably actually better to face the
for the
council.
mic, for the mic.
Yeah.
I've been there about a year and a half after Rich Watson had retired, after being here about 9 years. Let's see, I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey after having a Bachelor of Civil Engineering at Rutgers University.
Thank you. So there was an article, and the reason I asked you to come in, that talked about reduced flows and things of that nature with our sewer plant. Can you just address what's gone on in the last few years with that in terms of capital improvements and whether they help? I'll give you the floor. I gave you kind of a broad question there, maybe too broad, but.
It probably is too broad. I mean, I could speak for hours.
We'll take the Cliff Notes version if that's okay.
Generally, I did collect some notes with some tables and graphs and things. I don't have them for distribution, which all can be provided. I have all the information, but generally, over the years, looking at about 20 years of data, our flows have gone down. That's about, if you look at 2010 to 1997, the flows have gone down about 12%. That's compared to the flows from 2011 to current. Why? Why do I pick 2010? Because that's when Hamilton aggressively started lining their sewer system. Not all of it, the problem segments of the collection system.
And what is lining our sewer system?
Lining, it's cured in place lining, where it's in situ form is a good example of one of the key manufacturers in the industry, where they actually bring in, it sort of looks like a sock impregnated with different polyesters and things like that. They cure it, they sort of force it into the pipe under pressure, they force it against the outside of the pipe, and then they cure it in place so it becomes rock hard and it lines the complete interior of the pipe. It can be structurally sound or non-structurally sound, and it has a thickness to it. So it can take the place of the pipe actually. That actually becomes a sealed pipe, so it cannot leak.
And why?
I mean, it can, but you have to test it to make sure it's not leaking.
And what's the purpose of doing something like that?
Lining, usually it's problematic pipe. It could be cracked, it could be completely deteriorated. We have had a section in town where the complete bottom of the pipe was missing. It had deteriorated. You can't have that.
So you said this started around 2010?
When we started doing more aggressive lining, more of it.
Okay.
We had actually started some in 1998. I show some records of some smaller amounts of lining, but in 2010 I started more aggressive lining, more of it.
Carrie, is it a continuous process? Are you constantly doing this lining?
We are.
Process?
We do capital planning for it,
Okay.
and it's not like we do it every week of the year. It's depending on the company. We have to bid it out, so we may finish a project, we may change the specifications, we may bid out another section. And we wouldn't be able to do this if we weren't so proactive in asset management. That means that Tracer, which is our program to map our every pipe in our collection system for wastewater is mapped in a GIS system, and therefore we can monitor it. So whenever we go out to it, we can say, okay, we video cameraed that section of pipe, it's recorded and kept in the system, actually with those nodes in that digitized electronic program, if you will. So with that, we can go back and see what's the history at that section of pipe in that portion of town, that type of thing. Or it also has materials of pipe, size of pipe, all kinds of things. So we can say, oh, we see a consistent pattern of problem. Let's TV that pipe. Then we can put that in the asset management program too, and go back and look at that anytime we want. We can say, oh, that's deteriorating. Oh, that looks good. Or there's a big grease problem there, whatever it is.
And so what's the purpose? I mean, obviously you talked about sealing the pipe by lining it. What's the benefit to the town or the sewer authority to do something like this?
Well, I don't know how to say it in a simple enough term, but you have to take care of your assets. Just like you take care of your gutters in your house and your roof in your house. You know, what's the benefit of taking care of that? Because you want it to last, you want it to serve its purpose. Same thing with these pipes. We want to collect the sewage throughout the town and bring it to the treatment plant. So we just have to take care of it. And that's part of the issues you hear about in America with towns not doing that, or big problems, collapses, disasters, and that America generally is behind in that, whether it's wastewater, water, etc. So with wastewater, Hamilton's doing a phenomenal job. And it started way before I got here, and it's because of the staff down there and the foresight.
Now, in terms of, you had the opportunity to take a few of us on a tour about 9-10 months ago, and thank you again publicly for that. That was great and gives us a little bit of a working knowledge. Stormwater. So part of the ceiling, my understanding is to keep stormwater out of coming into the sewer plant. Did I say that right?
That's good enough. You can call storm, rain, anything that's groundwater. It could be. It could anything that's not wastewater. We all know what wastewater is. So storm, you would think is just from a storm, but it also includes groundwater, or it could be, I don't want to say river water, that type of thing. If you live near a stream, it could include all those types of things. So when pipes deteriorate, they will generally leak in these types of water. Therefore, it's generally clean water. And in fact, generally storm sewers, storm drains, I'll call them storm drains, those usually go out to the rivers, right? They have maybe a coarse grate to collect trash, and maybe a catch basin at some private residential property, and then it will find its way out to a stream or something to that effect. So that, as you can imagine, is fairly clean. It's not super clean, but it's fairly clean. Wastewater is not. From our toilets and our showers is not. We want to keep that out. And you're going to say, well, why don't you just treat it all together? Not good. Why? Because first of all, if you can imagine when it rains, the design factor at DEP is 2.5. So if I have your treatment plan is designed and permitted for 16 MGD. So I have to design the hydraulic capacity at that plant and for the pipes to bring the wastewater to our plant to handle 2.5 times that. If you can imagine the cost and the infrastructure, not only to build it, but to maintain it, you don't want that clean water in our system. So in fact, when DEP finds numbers that are much above 2.5, say 3.5, and I've seen them in some towns, they want them to do an I&I study, infiltration inflow, which means where is this clean water coming in? You need to find it and get it out. And that's why we don't want clean water incoming. The other thing it aggravates is because you're going to say, well, it's diluting your water at the plant, it's easier to treat, you can send it out cleaner. Well, it's sort of diluting it, but what was it in the 60s or so, the solution to pollution isn't dilution, that kind of thing. But the thing is, it actually makes us harder to meet some of our permit parameters because we have things that are called percent removal. So if I have 100 parts per million of BOD coming into the plant and I have to remove 90% of it, if it's cleaner, the number's lower percentage-wise, and therefore it's harder to meet to still remove that 90%, if you're with me. So if it's dirtier, it's easier for me to remove 90%. So anyway.
So do you have a percentage or a number of how much we've been able to reduce since we got aggressive with it in or around 2010 then?
So
I know you gave us one percentage. I didn't know if that was back from the 90s or back from 2010.
that percentage takes the data. I have to mark this as fiscal year data because that matters. This is only for sanitary. 1997 to 2010, the average flow for those 14 years was 9.81 MGD. The years after that, from 2011 to 2018 inclusive, the average for those 8 years was 8.56 MGD. That's a reduction of 12.7%. That's for Hamilton Township's plant flow, annual average total. That includes Robbinsville at the plant, of course. So that's the reduction.
And then, by realizing that reduction, are there cost savings that come with that in terms of like having to buy less chlorine or buy less, repair the machines less, things like that?
Well, as you know, we're a wastewater plant where we don't manufacture widgets. So if we were a widget factory and you took out the base costs for manufacturing, there would be a direct correlation between the cost to manufacture the widgets and the number of widgets you make. But that's not the case here. For example, we have 2 final clarifiers. I don't care if you're running 6 MGD or you're running 12 MGD or you're running 20 MGD. You gotta run the 2 clarifiers. That's the rotating mechanism on the bottom of the clarifier that goes around and around 24/7, 365. We have 2 operators, well, we have more during the day, but we have 2 operators there, 24/7, 365. It's required by DEP. Doesn't matter, again, if we have 2, 6, 10, 20, 30 MGD at the plant, it doesn't matter. So most of our costs are pretty steady because it's not manufacturing widgets again where you can say, okay, we're done making what we need to make, we can stop the costs. Our costs are always continuous. We have polymer pumps, they need repair, they need maintenance, etc. And we run, we'll have 2 running and we'll have 1 backup, but we have 2 running all the time. So if we got down to a constant flow of, let's just say 4 MGD, we could do an engineering analysis that may show you only have to run 1 final clarifier, but you'd have to be much, quite a bit lower and also very steady at those kind of low flows. I'll make one other analogy which may help also. You have a 3-bedroom house, let's just assume you have a 4-person family, you have a son in college, and you have a daughter in high school. The son goes off to college, you heat your house with oil. So what's going to happen to the use of oil in the house? Is it going to go down year-round to heat the house, or say in the winter, or is it going to stay the same, or is it going to go up? So you're saying, well, you have 1 less person at the house, then the cost must be much different. Well, of course, for food for a son, it would be much less. But in general, to heat your house, it's going to be the same. You set it on 72 or whatever you set it on. During the day, it's going to stay the same. It doesn't matter if he's there or not. It's kind of like that. That's a pretty good analogy.
In terms of then, the end product, do you save anything because you're putting out, all I'm trying to see is, are there savings at any place there, right? And I know we're not at the budget stage yet and all of that, and I understand that. But just for our sake of understanding, are there, reduced maintenance potential for reduced maintenance costs because you're not running, and you showed us all the different rooms, all the different machines, right? I'm just trying to understand it that way, and I understand the analogies too.
Yeah. A tiny bit. Maybe you need a little bit less chemicals. Some plants, and ours has some, I don't know all of them exactly, but some have what's called flow paste chemicals. So, and that means that the flow goes up, it will automatically increase the dosage of the chemical, but we don't have a lot of that. I think we have some of that. So, but it's a matter of philosophy of the plant, automation or not, and that type of thing. Also, we have an older plant. I will be bringing back some of that. I've talked to our staff and things like that. I can give you another couple of numbers, which is interesting. So over this time, we've decreased. So 12% is very good. And what did I say? 1.25 MGD, which is quite good. I mean, it's not in half or it's not in quarter, nothing like that. But for example, I can tell you the draft numbers for the 2018 calendar year flows. They'll be in the annual report that's coming out just shortly. We all know 2018 was a very wet year. So what happened down in this collection system? We were actually running an average of, over the last 3 years, of about what I said, here. That was, I did Robbinsville's flows here. It was about 8 MGD, something like that. Last year we ran 9 MGD. So when I take that flow published in the 2017 annual report for 2017 versus the 2018 numbers which are coming out, that was 7.35 MGD. That's a 22% increase in flow in this 1 year.
Wow.
So 17 happened to be a dry year, relatively dry year, the flow numbers were down. So you're gonna say, well, generally the flows are generally kinda coming down. It's not like that. It's sort of like this, and then you get dry years, and then you get this really wet year. Okay, great, now we got super lot of costs. So it sort of takes the thought of, okay, we have less costs, let's save money, and it sort of throws it all out the window. Okay, now we got this big cost, and we're gonna need more money, and gotta ask council. That's not the case, we're okay. And so what I found out is that when I looked at some of the past actual history of numbers, is that from 2017 to 2018, our actual costs were only about 0.2% higher. Why? Efficiency, different things like that. Because, again, the flows don't impact the plant a super significant amount, whether you're going high or you're going low. So why do they go up every year? Salaries, cost of chemicals increase, energy increases. And when you look at our annual report, you'll see that some other numbers have gone up very slightly and slowly over time. But I was also very surprised and delighted to know that from 17 to 18, our plant electrical consumption went down significantly from 4.767 million kilowatts to 4.44. So I was very delightfully surprised. You say, well, how's that even possible? You're running the pumps, you're running the clarifiers, right? Same thing. We've been working on diligently light-saving, efficient light-saving devices throughout the entire plant, everywhere throughout the plant. Also, VFDs save a lot of energy because they pace with the pump with how you need it. They'll ramp up and they'll ramp down more smoothly and easily. So those are usually better for energy as well. So, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I only have one more question. We'll see if there's any other questions.
Just Carrie, just so I know we may have a lot of people here that don't understand flow and what's a decrease in flow. Can you just explain so everybody has an understanding what flow means, what a decrease in flow means and increase means? Just
Sure.
very brief.
Oh,
Simple.
absolutely. Yes. So let's see. If I take a
Don't get too graphic.
I need a whiteboard. I forgot to ask Rich Williams or something. If I take a gallon of milk and
Harry, is it safe to say it's just the amount of product that is coming through the pipes when we talk about flow?
It's a rate. Flow is a rate. So it's volume, which is gallons per time. So I could say our plant on average is, say, 8.5 million gallons a day it comes through that plant. So that's what it is. That's not really comprehensible that much.
So by decreasing the flow rate, is that good or bad? Decreasing is good, right? 'Cause
well, rainwater in our pipes, yes, we want that decreased and minimized. Frankly, wastewater is what it's gonna be. Design numbers at DEP, 300 gallons a day per resident. So that's how we design it, and that's what we anticipate from a house. Sure, more comes some days, some comes less than other days, but that's the average, 300 gallons per standard 3-bedroom or more house. So if you take all those, you can't say, okay, make the wastewater flow less. Are we gonna turn off the houses? We can't do that. So that's all steady and constant. So you don't really change that too much. Is Hamilton growing? Sure, that's great and wonderful. We make our connections, and those are also reported in our annual report. I think last year we had, I think it was 8 new connections, residential connections. So, does that answer your question?
I hope that answers.
What flow is? Do you understand what flow is?
It's a little arrogant. I understand what
See,
flow
when
is.
you go home tonight, you'll flush that toilet and you'll be thinking of flow rates and that good stuff.
That's right.
Carrie, thanks for joining us. Can you talk about the item 3HH on the consent agenda and talk to us a little bit about what that consists of? The professional services agreement with Kleinfelder.
Yes, sir. This is a recommendation to give a contract award for design and construction services, resident inspection to this engineering company. We would not normally need to come here because they are already approved by council for our consultants for different process categories in engineering. It's not the amount of money either, that's not why we're here. The reason is because we don't have approval to begin this project for repair of the digester. That is in the 2019 proposed budget. So I can't start a design and somebody say, wait a minute, what are you doing designing? You don't even have approval from council to build this thing. So that's why we're here. I believe I don't remember how much it was in the budget, but that's a draft number from our engineers who gave us that estimated amount, including cleaning out the digester, et cetera. The digester, crapped out, I'll say, in 2018.
For lack of a better word.
It's funny how that's a good word for a lot of things. Actually, the cover on it cocked one day, so you can't run it like that. So we tried various things, that type of thing. So we shut it down. It's sitting there. It's waiting for us, but it needs repair. We're also doing the thickener. That got approved in the 2018 budget. So all that's fine. Everything's fine. We got these proposals, and one company bid on both projects. The company we're proposing bid on both projects as to build and design as one. So while I will favor generally having two contracts to share the, let's say, love and construction and shared among the industry,
Responsibility.
it is more efficient and it is safer, it is easier for construction, coordination, congestion at the site for two big contractors doing this work, to have it all done as one contract with one contractor. This Kleinfelder company proposed that at this price, and it is a cost savings to do them both together. Obviously, bidding, you bid it once, etc. You have one inspector on site, you know, two construction companies, administration documents, etc. to handle. So this is fine, and everything's here is fine, except the fact that we really need to move forward with this. And therefore, it's actually impacting our process. And it's becoming a broken leg. So we, one way or another, we really need to move forward.
So just looking at that, the Blue Card Horn proposal, there was a concern whether that will be done at the same time. Is that why? Because their numbers were a little bit less than Kleinfelder?
Their proposal is to do two separate contracts.
Okay.
But to build them at the same time, but have two contractors out there.
Okay.
Two construction sets bid and separately administered.
Okay.
That's what their proposal was. That's what our original request was, which Kleinfelder bid on that as well. But then they said, we'll give you a cost savings to do it all together.
All together.
That's right.
Okay.
Any other questions from council? We're not voting on any resolutions, so if anybody from the public has questions on those resolutions, we'll get to them then. Carrie, thank you very much for coming in. I think you've enlightened us, and we'll probably see you in a few months when we do the budget, including, I guess, this project as well.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for respect, I notice Mayor Dave Freed is here from Robbinsville, so Mayor, thank you for joining us, and I just want to recognize you. Now Mr.
McElmoyle? Thank you very much.
I was gonna butcher it no matter what, I apologize.
I appreciate that.
And just for the, everybody in the audience, so we're here tonight to talk about the Chesterfield fire consolidation that's going on.
That's correct.
I'll address, maybe later on, some further discussion and things we have going on with the Hamilton fire consolidation, but this is separate and apart, so the floor is yours, thank you.
That is correct. Thank you, Mr. Council President. So again, my name is Caitlin McElmoyle. I'm an attorney here representing Chesterfield Township. Just to give everyone, especially the public, kind of a background on why I'm here. Chesterfield Township applied to the local finance board to see its two fire districts consolidated. The consolidation application was submitted to the local finance board in October. There's been a lot of collaborative work back and forth between our fire districts, the township, and the state. That all culminated with an in-person meeting with the DCA director last Tuesday. As a result of those conversations, it was requested by the DCA director that you all hold a public hearing for the benefit, particularly for a group of citizens that reside in Hamilton Township, but are serviced by Fire District 1 out of Chesterfield. So a part of the process that we underwent was submitting this application, holding a public hearing. Our township committee adopted a resolution consenting to the consolidation and authorizing the application to the local finance board. And we're basically here so that those people who are living in Hamilton Township have that opportunity to be heard on the potential consolidation. So what I had prepared for council this evening was a proposed resolution, and it would be appropriate for your attorney to make any sort of changes that you feel comfortable in making, but basically I tried to make it pretty vanilla. It's an acknowledgement that Chesterfield has this going on, and that is being done basically at the strong urgence of the state. And another thing that the state requested to see out of this relationship, which by all accounts has been a very good relationship between Hamilton Township and Fire District 1 with the service to these, I would say, 20, 30, 35 people. I actually have a map of where these people reside, so it's this teeny tiny, and I can circulate this if you'd like.
Thank you.
There's just a handful of people.
I think it's 19 residents. 17 or 19?
So
17?
we got a clearer count when one of our career firefighters went around and personally hand delivered the notice for the hearing tonight. So I do want to take the time to say thank you to council and your staff for getting us on your agenda in a rush. We weren't really anticipating the way that this was headed with the state, and you guys really stepped up, and we appreciate that very much.
Can you just give a quick, bullet point, Cliff Notes version of what your consolidation plan looks like? It's,
Sure.
Combining of districts, creating a new district,
Sure. So currently, Chesterfield Township has 2 fire districts. They will be consolidating eventually into one firehouse that's located off of Bordentown Chesterfield Road. And you can see by that map, that's the one that's dead center in the middle of the service area. District 1 now operates kind of closer to Crosswicks. That will eventually be decommissioned. The vehicles will be moved out of there. The staff will be moved out of there. The location on Bordentown Chesterfield Road is a bigger facility. So that is an impact as part of this consolidation. There will be, it's not anticipated that anyone be hired, more career staff be hired, no one's losing jobs. They're basically just consolidating the personnel. So what we have seen happen over the last, I guess, several years is the District 2, which currently operates out of the centrally located firehouse on Bordentown Chesterfield Road, is comprised only of volunteer firefighters. And over the past couple of years, with the calls that have been coming in, they've really needed to rely on Fire District 1, which has the career staff. So everybody, I think, can relate to the fact that you can't always leave your job, in the middle of the day when you get a call that comes in. So this is basically formalizing what has already been happening in Chesterfield over the last several years.
Any questions from council?
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for having us.
Mr. President, can we find out if there's any residents
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
audience?
No, I just
Yeah,
wanted to take
we're gonna
questions
do
from
that.
council
Okay.
first,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's gonna affect them.
So what I would ask council to do is to open the floor for a public hearing. And then if there's any sort of questions that I can answer, I'm here for it. I think there's also some of my fire district colleagues here in the audience today, and if they're gonna raise their hand and identify themselves. So with operational questions, they may be able to answer
Sure.
questions too. So
So at this point, we're gonna have a public hearing on the Chesterfield Fire Consolidation Plan. Again, separate and apart from the Fire Consolidation Plan for Hamilton. Is there any member here presently who wishes to ask a question or make a comment on Chesterfield's consolidation plan? Okay. See none. So my understanding is I know you've provided already to both myself, Mr. Kennedy, and Mr. Ballin, our township attorney, a copy of a draft resolution for a shared service agreement. And that's something, my understanding is the local finance board would like to see, and please correct me if my understanding is wrong, in some form or fashion for your plan to move forward. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I would back up and say that this relationship between this group of people that we call North Crosswicks and Fire District 1 has been in existence since about 1862. So when the DCA director asked me for a shared services agreement or something to show that there's an agreement formally in existence, we weren't really able to show too much. So basically, moving forward, that's what the state would like to see. So we can disagree back and forth whether a shared services agreement is the way to really achieve that, but I think the important part is maintaining that relationship, acknowledging kind of the obligations between the parties, and we are more than willing to sit down with you, and I just kind of wanted to get a starting point for us.
I appreciate that very much. Any other thing from council? We've talked already, Mr. Kenny, Mr. Ballin. They're going to look at it and get back to us on it.
Great.
And I'm sure they have your contact information, I know as well. So if there's issues, they can.
The resolution itself doesn't appear to have any problems. It's just the shared services. We want to just review and be sure we're comfortable with that and recommend that to council.
Excellent. Is there any sort of action that you could take tonight? Even if it's...
Are you looking for the resolution that we had a public hearing and that we're...
Even if you wanted to delete, and I think it's the third paragraph,
Yes.
in the now be it resolved portion, if you wanted to take that out, and I can just represent to the state that we are, this is an ongoing conversation, I'd appreciate that.
Mr. President, the third paragraph the council is referring to is the one that talks about the authorization to sign the shared services agreement based upon my review and approval and consent of council. So I think if we deleted that paragraph, we certainly would have no problem adopting the resolution tonight.
Okay. One other thing, I know that there was hand delivery in terms of the notices. Was there also anything put in the papers?
Yes, we submitted the advertisement to the Trenton Times. And I believe also asked that the Trentonian be updated as well. The problem with that was Chesterfield Township didn't have a billing account associated with their legal advertisements. So we wanted to belt and suspenders the whole thing with the personal service, and I'm glad we did that.
Okay. So this is the resolution we had on the agenda as 2B, 2 Bravo.
Correct.
Everybody, hopefully on council already has, it's just a 3-page document. So any questions from council on this 3-page resolution?
Just, Mr. Brown, what are we pulling from it?
The only thing I would suggest that we remove is paragraph 3. I mean, technically.
Number 3 on the.
On
Third
page 3?
Page 3, okay.
Paragraph 3 and page 3.
Why do we need to?
That authorizes the town to enter into the shared services agreement, but we want to see the shared services agreement before we authorize that.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's fine.
Just in case there's anything that the council has a problem with, either financially or otherwise, I'd rather not be
Sure.
locked into it.
Any other questions from council? So since this is a resolution, open it up to the public, any member of the public, on commenting on the resolution, saying that we held this public hearing tonight and support Chesterfield's efforts.
Morning to everyone.
Chief Anazeski?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mark Anazeski, Fire Chief, Hamilton Township, District 9. We're well aware of District 1
is surrounded by District 9. We work well with Crosswicks. I just wanted, for clarity for you folks and for the public, is that this resolution is to allow the new Chesterfield Fire District to be responsible for fire protection in that small District Number 1. Is that correct?
So the resolution is supporting Chesterfield's efforts to consolidate, and then there'll be a part of the shared services agreement is the formalization of the agreement of who covers what territory. Did I get that right?
So, Chief, the way I understand that this works is that the calls start in Mercer County, and I believe someone is sent out from Mercer County, and then Fire District 1 only is called as backup, I believe. Where am I going? I think that's how it works now. So there is an agreement I don't want to say an agreement in place now. There's that relationship that has existed for so many years, and this is basically formalizing that. So what I wanted to provide to council tonight was something that was very generic. So we can certainly sit down and talk about what that means to be providing fire protection services. But this district does in Chesterfield respond to those calls. So this is just something that the state wanted to see completed, and they basically conditioned our approval on having some sort of formalized agreement with the township.
Okay. Well, again, I just wanted to clarify for you and for the residents that live there that the folks that are at Crosswicks Fire Station are now going to be several miles away. We're still going to respond, and the council was corrected. When you dial 911, it still goes to Mercer County, actually it goes to Hamilton Police first, and then it gets routed to Mercer County Central, and they dispatch us and appropriate companies, and then they're supposed to call Burlington Central to dispatch Crosswicks or Chesterfield. So there is a process in place. I just wanted everyone to realize that this change or this protection, just the folks that respond to those calls are now going to be at the other station, and I just wanted the people that live there to realize that that response from their fire district that's under this agreement, I assume, will still continue to collect tax dollars for that protection. We're still going to respond from within the Hamilton companies, but the company that's responsible for them is actually further away. I just wanted to make sure that the residents knew that that was a change, and if that's the direction that this resolution was going, just want to make clear for public safety reasons that there may be a delay with these folks arriving. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. We're not saying we're not responding, we're still going to respond as we had been, but just for clarity, I wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else from the public wishing to ask a question or comment on this? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. President, I move resolution 2B.
I like the second.
But that's
With the
as amended.
As amended.
Yes. So, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, can you take the roll, please?
Ms. Schirmer?
Yes.
Mr. Mastrangelo?
Yes.
Carabelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Passes 5-0 as amended.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
All right, Madam Clerk, we're on minutes now.
Minutes, we have the September 18th, October 2nd, and October 16th, 2018 regular meeting minutes for your approval.
Can I make a comment before we
Sure.
move on this? As I was looking through the minutes, we see the October 2nd, and we have September 18th, and the other one. There's some, I would actually like to almost table this, because there's some things that need to be corrected on all of them. It seems like some of the minutes are not, and I understand we're summarizing, but I wanna make sure we're summarizing correctly, because as you read some of the comments from ourselves or the members of the public, it's not clear what some of these things are saying. And I mean, I can sit down with you and we can go through some of these. I don't think we should be putting minutes out that are not capturing exactly what people are saying. And I can be more specific if, by sitting down, but for example, we had, Don Huber came in and made a presentation.
Councilwoman, if you wanna make a motion
Yeah.
to table, my guess is that would be supported.
If you will, but I just wanna make sure of that, because I want the minutes to be accurate. And if you go into the minutes years
not.
from now, months from now, you know, it's not capturing what really was said and what really happened. I mean, when minutes, when the audio of the council meetings is reviewed, does that audio at any point in time get audited or can it be edited?
Can it be edited?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Or it runs the full stream, and whoever's listening is taking, is transcribing
We
what's.
don't transcribe, we have reduced the minutes to action minutes, and basically it's recording the actions of the governing body.
Mhm.
When we have comments from the public, whether it be consent agenda or resolution or ordinance, we basically, take the, we say either they are in opposition to a particular resolution or, that they're in agreement with it, and to keep it very, general, so we don't misinterpret, people's comments.
Okay, well, we can sit down, I can give you examples of what just caught my eye throughout all of the minutes, so.
That's fine.
I'd like to make a motion to table the minutes.
I can second that.
Madam Clerk, roll please.
Ms. Schirmer?
Yes.
Mr. Mastrangelo?
Yes.
Carabelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes. So we'll table the minutes. Just moving backwards for a second, I know I said I would address this when Chesterfield was here. Some of you may have read, there was a newspaper article the other day on Hamilton's fire consolidation process, and I just wanted to provide an update on that. You heard, I'm gonna butcher her name again, Ms. McElmoy, talk about conversations and collaborations they had with the Director of Local Government Services, the Department of Community Affairs. There was also particularly one issue raised in terms of negotiating contracts prior to our consolidation effort moving forwd. Mr. Kenny and I, as well as the subcommittee, are in the process of scheduling a meeting with them to get more information on what their exact concerns are and how we can work our way through that. One of the things we tried to avoid on the subcommittee was the town having to absorb 20-something contracts between all the different entities, and districts, and things like that. A little bit of a hiccup on it, and we'll work with the state to find out what their recommendations are and work through those recommendations. But I'm still confident, and I think everybody up here is still confident that at the end of the day, we'll still provide a more efficient and safer service for you. So I just want to provide that update. Obviously, after we have a meeting with the state, and it should be by the end of the month, we'll be able to provide more information at our next council meeting. So, Madam Clerk, moving on to communications.
Certainly, communication 1A is commemorating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is Monday, January 21, 2019. And 1B is the Girl Scouts of Central and Southern New Jersey requesting permission to conduct tag-based solicitations of various specified fruit and dates and locations for the months of January through March 2019.
Mr. President, I'd like to move communications 1A and 1B.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, please take a roll.
Ms. Schirmer?
Yes.
Mr. Mastrangelo?
Yes.
Mr. Carabelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Okay, Council President, it's not on your agenda, but we've added resolution 3, which is a resolution adopting an amended cash management plan for the Township of Hamilton for the year 2019, for which you all have a copy. And then on the consent agenda, we have 3A through 3. Triple B minus 3 double S, 3 double T, 3 double U, 3 double V, 3 double W. Triple C and 3 triple D were also removed from the agenda.
So we're basically at 3, then 3A, through 3 triple B minus the removal items. Did I get that right?
Well, we're gonna go from 3 to 3T, 3U was removed, and we'll move on to 3B,
3U was removed as well?
yes. And then we end at 3 double R, and then we pick up again at 3 double X, and end at 3 triple B, as in boy.
So at this point, I'm gonna open it up to questions from council. Councilwoman Schirmer.
What why are we getting the cash management? Is this something changed?
Yes.
What changed?
Oh, Mr. Barrett's not here right now.
What changed here?
Mr. Barrett is not here.
No, I know, what changed here?
The only thing that's changed in here is what, Council President Morton, we only ever had 2 people who could sign checks, the mayor and chief financial officer. It seems, so the only thing that changed was to have 2 classes. Primary, would be the mayor or chief financial officer, and then the second signature would have to either come from the business administrator, the assistant director of finance, or the budget officer. That's the only change to the cash management.
Okay, so we have no CFO at this point in time. So that would make it the mayor and then you or an assistant director of finance. Who is that?
That's, Mr. Mulrine.
And budget officer, who is that?
There's nobody in that position. We made an offer to someone today, so we hope to have a budget officer on board within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Well, I can tell you, I'm not comfortable at this point in time having you or the mayor or Moline or somebody else that I don't know who it is signing off on things at this point in time. If we're gonna make any change to this cash management plan, I think council needs to be added that anything that is being signed off on or a check, that we should be notified as to what is being signed off on. Because we don't have a CFO at this point in time.
No, I've spoken to an individual that I'm hoping will come on as an acting CFO 1 day a week, so that things can still proceed. In terms of council being notified, obviously,
Dave,
That-
notify because there's no trust.
that would be
There's no
great.
trust.
Well, but right now, we're in a situation where no checks could be written.
And whose fault is that?
Well, we won't get into that.
No, we will.
Why
No,
not?
we will.
Why
We
not?
will.
Let's get into it.
We actually will get into that. We actually will get into that. Because that, you are talking, no, don't lay back and act like it's no big deal. You are talking about the finance office, our CFO, the man that has taken Hamilton to where it is, situation where we are supposed to just blindly trust your signature, blindly trust the mayor, and blindly trust Mulrine and whoever else is hired that we don't know to sign off on stuff that has to do with finances. I'm not comfortable at all whatsoever.
At the current time, the cash management plan only provided for the mayor and the chief financial officer. Mr. Barrett, on numerous occasions, designated that duty
And that's
to Mr.
fine.
Muller.
If he designated it, that was fine.
Well,
But
you
now
wanna
we have.
propose some other people, but otherwise you're gonna shut down the township.
No, I didn't
because we
shut
can't
down anything you did.
Well,
So,
Mr.
no.
Sherman, we can get
No, I
into
get it,
that.
and we will
Okay.
discuss this
Okay.
further. We will
Okay,
discuss
that's
this
fine.
further.
But this is something that, I just
I know,
discussed
but-
with Council President Morton, I think is a very reasonable approach. It can always be changed in the future.
Dave,
Yes, Anthony.
just one quick question. So, I don't have it in front of me. What was the cash management plan that we approved at, who was the primary and who was the secondary, just so
It was the mayor and chief financial officer.
or the primary?
But if you
Or was it-
recall, language was put into that, if the chief financial officer could designate someone, to certify funds. We had a discussion with the local, Division of Local Government Services, because Mr. Barrett was out for such an extensive period between early November and December 31, he only worked about 7 days. And that was so cumbersome, and the provision was also put in that, after 5 days, if he hasn't designated anybody, it would be the assistant finance director to certify funds.
So there were not 2 categories of primary and secondary? on
No,
it?
that was actually Council President Morton's suggestion, and I thought it was a good one.
So Dave, the only thing with this though, when we had talked, in my vision, I saw primary being the mayor or the business administrator, so kind of an administrative side of it, and then somebody from the finance side of it.
I think that makes perfect sense, that'd be fine, so we could swap, put business administrator under primary and chief financial officer under secondary,
So this way you have somebody
Yes.
who knows how to look at the books and
to
see-
make sure there's sufficient funds there. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Okay.
So that, I think that should be amended in that way.
But I think we should add something where council should, even if council has submitted something at the end of the month of everything that was signed, every check that was written, a copy of what's been done. We don't have a CFO overlooking this. I'm not trusting the mayor with the money, and I'm certainly not trusting finance, the individuals right now there. So I think we should have something, we should add something that council is provided information as to what has been signed off on and what's been paid.
We can give you a bill list at the end of each month if you want to show every bill that's been paid.
Can we add this here? And we can always amend this, but can we add this to reflect that council will be provided with that information?
We're already making one edit.
All right, in paragraph 12, it'll say, a complete bill list will be submitted monthly to the council.
Dave, can you talk a little bit about hiring an outside temporary CFO for the township?
Well, my thought was to have somebody as a separate set of eyes to come in. I spoke to one individual, who's considering it, and I would come to the council with that as well.
So wait a minute, you're saying your plan is to interview someone, right?
Yes.
And those individuals and this would be a temporary person,
Correct.
temporary person. And this temporary person will have to come before council to be interviewed as well, correct?
We can certainly do that, sure.
Yeah, we should. So I, huh?
Not for a permanent position.
No, but we should be able to see who this individual is, what qualifications and so forth.
So what we propose is in paragraph 12, the complete bill list shall be submitted to the council within 7 days at the end of each month.
So Dave, on the finance side, the one thing I'm concerned about is right now, there's no CFO, right now, there's no budget officer, so there's only the assistant director of finance. And just in terms of stuff we've talked about before, it makes me a little uneasy to say the mayor and the assistant director of finance, given who they are, would both be signing the same check, given a relationship, right? So I don't know if we can work in something that.
You want to add the purchasing agent?
Yeah, or maybe that there can be no familial relationship between two people signing the checks, right? Just to avoid any, at least appearance of.
Fabulous.
Impropriety or conflict or anything like that. I'm not saying there would be, I'm just saying just to avoid even the appearance of it, right? So,
There would be.
So it would be me, the assistant.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so only one or the other would be able to sign the same item. So I have more questions on hiring an outside CFO. Sorry.
Please, go ahead.
What do you anticipate the time horizon for that being?
Well, I would hope to be back to the council maybe even next week with who I'm suggesting. And then,
Council doesn't mean that.
next meeting, not next week. Right?
yeah, well, next week, maybe the information and a resume, and then at the next meeting.
So has the hiring of a temporary CFO been publicly advertised?
No.
Of course not.
We can certainly do that. You know, there are people that we can reach out. Ideally, it's going to be someone with a lot of experience, maybe retired, but still has a CFO license. You know, a 1 day a week situation.
For the sake of transparency, I think I'd be more comfortable if we advertise that. So what type of range of
Boom.
applicants we could get for that?
And if we can see all those who have applied.
That's fine.
Councilman, you have other questions?
Who right now has authority to sign certifications of funds?
Nobody.
Right now, it would be the assistant director of finance. That's what the classification management plan calls for.
No?
And then obviously, we get a temporary CO, he would be able to do it too. Mr. Barrett had designated it to Danielle Peacock, or tax collector, but, that designation ran out under the terms of what he imposed.
And so then, under the cash management plan, now we have to wait 5 days, and then it would automatically go to the assistant director of finance.
Yes.
So find
So
us,
does
you've
he
got
have the
this into Ollie.
qualifications to sign off on that?
And he has a CFO license.
Okay, so we'll make those changes.
So just to summarize on that one, so there's 3 proposed edits. One is to put the business administrator under the primary and put the CFO under the secondary. The second is to add some type of sentence to the effect of there can be no familiar relationship between a primary and a secondary. And then the third is to add a paragraph 12 to say a complete bill will be provided to council on a monthly basis.
On the result of advertising, I'd like something about, a requirement for an advertisement for that to be included.
The advertisement for the position,
Yeah.
but that's not on the cash management plan, right? That's just separate.
Separate.
Yeah.
But, Mr. President, I did suggest that we say that the bill must be provided to you within 7 days of the end of the month.
Okay,
So that way there's an expectation of when
Sure.
you'll have it.
sure.
Okay?
Councilor, any other questions on any other items on the consent agenda?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Let me just- I'm glad to see that we have appointments, and we have appointments to the commission for the arts, called the Arts Commission. Mr. Kenny, I just wanna make sure regarding the arts that we don't have more confusion, because the mayor apparently has caused confusion in individuals, that were appointed. Once this goes through, who is going to be who is it gonna fall on to make the schedule of the first meeting? I can certainly do that, or who from the mayor's office, or, I'd like some clarity on that.
Well, I think it go either way. I know Mr. Ty had scheduled a meeting on his own.
But Mr. Ty is not
He's a member, but.
He's a member,
he
that's
went
it.
We're not talking about the council.
No, not him. Not Rick Ty.
Mr. Ty. And, so.
Okay, then I
You
can.
could either coordinate with Dominic Gregory, or you can do it, you could.
Okay, then I wanna go on record so there is no misunderstanding as we move forward, that I can reach out to Dominic, but I will reach out to the committee members, and we'll take it from there to schedule our first meeting. And at that first meeting is where we vote on chair, co-chair, and so forth. Okay, as long as we have that on record. And I'm glad to see that we have some roof work that has been done, or being done. I know that it's about time on some of them. But I wanna make sure I miss this one. Regarding the veterinary, the contract with Dr. Bowden. Is there any issue with the account that this money is supposed to come out from? To come from? Is there issues with the funds?
No, there's no issue with the funds. It's built into the budget, there's also, it's built into the budget.
There's also what?
There's certain money in the temporary budget, like anything else, and there's an annual contract, it's subject to funding in the permanent budget.
Hold on, let me just find it, hold on.
3QQ, so.
Yes, it's all the way back here. Hold on. Hold on, I'm sorry. Now, I just wanna make sure sure that, hold on, let me see here. So right now it says it's gonna be paid from account number, and it has the account number listed. Has that changed?
I'm not sure which version you're looking at, but it's, subject, it's from the appropriate account in calendar year 2019, subject to the availability and appropriation of sufficient funds in that municipal budget.
Oh,
So right now-
that I don't have.
That's.
Can I see that?
It's pretty
What-
standard.
No,
Yeah.
did I miss it on this one?
It's not on the one in the book here.
So that's why I missed it, because it's not in the book. So. Where does it say that?
Last page
Last page?
of the resolution.
I must be blind, because I'm not.
Certification of availability of funds, it says calendar year 2019.
Where is it?
I'm not gonna be able to do it. But you do that, right?
Oh, here.
Right.
I see that we have here, the contract for Dr. Biden is listed for a year. Granted, with everything that's been going on at the animal shelter, and as we're still working out the kinks there, I'd like to know if we can amend that to reflect 6 months instead of a year, as we work through the issues that we have at the shelter. I would feel more comfortable committing to a 6-month contract. I'm not sure how anybody else feels. Curious to hear what you think about that.
We have to go through another bid process then in a couple of months. No one has bid other than Dr. Bowden in the past, just as no one bid other than Dr. Carter in years past. And,
Doesn't matter.
So-
I would feel more comfortable with the 6-month contract.
Yeah.
We can evaluate it as it moves forward.
I don't, I mean, it's up to council, but I don't see where that makes sense. And I think Dr. Bowden bid on a 1-year contract, so I don't know if, we even have a contract then.
Could we legally reduce it to 6 months? Mr. Ballin?
Not without going back to Dr. Bowden.
Yes, you could. You could offer it to her. She could not accept it.
I can only say what I would feel. I would feel more comfortable with the 6-month contract, understanding that in any contract, you can always, terminate a contract. I'm not saying we're going to, I'm just saying, it's nothing against Dr. Biden whatsoever, it's just, right now I have confidence in pretty much nothing, so I would feel more comfortable controlling things and evaluating things as it goes. That's just
So I'm gonna say I'm comfortable with a year contract, but you and I, we had a little back and forth on this, and I've heard good things about Dr. Bowden. I know that the euthanasia rate since Dr. Bowden took over at the shelter is way down, and I consider that a very positive development for our shelter. We've got a year contract. I'm willing to move forward with the year contract, just for the sake of continuity at this point.
No, I understand. I mean, if everybody
I agree with you.
is opposed to it, but if anybody else, okay. No further questions.
Councilman Mastrangelo.
Okay, I just had a couple. Mr. Kenny, on 3 M's and Mike, the affordable housing consultant. I know we had a couple of proposals on that. We went with Trio, and the CME Association went in too, but I didn't see anything in my packet regarding any, they were a low bid or anything. Did, why we have on that?
That was recommended by, this is involving our HUD funding, and it was recommended by that office. Now, this is 3MM, is housing consultants, it's actually HUD, and triad was recommended by them. They're basically done on an hourly basis. And if you look at the other entity that did, consulting and management engineers, they didn't respond to 5 of the 6 criteria.
Okay, so you said when I looked at
Yeah,
the
they didn't
proposals,
provide
right? The other one, okay, the other one I was curious, 3 Oscar, it's, Clark.
Clark Gate Hints.
Yeah, Clark Gate, regarding, I didn't see any bid, I knew there was 3 proposals on that one also. CME was another one that, I was there.
These bids are generally just hourly rates. This funding would come from applicants to the various boards. There's a cap on it, and Mr. Popper felt that Clark Gate Hints should get it. Again, they've been our consultant planner for.
Yeah, senior since 2009, I did see that.
Yeah.
And they're doing our affordable housing stuff too,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
familiar with that.
Yeah, so that continuity is very helpful.
The other one I was concerned with was, 22, oh yeah, the demolition on unsafe structure on, 22 Adela.
Della, that was an emergency bid.
Yes.
The house is ready to collapse. It's a row home, 2 other row homes. We saw 3 bids, only one bidder was willing to give us a price because it has to be a hand demolition. It's here that you're gonna damage the adjoining homes.
Yeah, that was my concern with demolition.
Yeah.
Because they're joined.
Yeah, they have to do it by hand and make sure they shore up the adjoining walls and the other homes.
Anything else, Councilman? Councilman Caravelli?
I just had one question, and this goes back to the Cultural Affairs and Performing Arts Advisory Commission. Is it an issue that the term of expiration is all the same? I mean, does that pose a problem? Did we want to stagger it? I don't wanna.
I think the ordinance.
Complicate the wheel.
I know.
The ordinance was set up that way. Maybe that's something we should revisit sometime in the future.
Okay, we'll set up that one, all right. That's it.
And we can probably just amend it to maybe say it served until a successor's appointed or something like
Yeah.
that, so.
That's fine, yeah, that
This
might
way,
work.
Make it easier.
yeah, you automatically then potentially get staggered,
Yeah.
Mr. Caravelli, anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Patton?
Mr. Kenny, regarding boards and commissions, I understand you have additional candidates that you were going to be interviewing for some additional openings on these boards and commissions.
Yeah, Mr. Flynn and Mr. Gregory will want to do that. Yes, we spoke to Mr. Morton about some of those.
What's the time, when can those candidates expect to hear from the administration?
Oh, I would certainly think within the next couple of weeks.
Okay,
I'll speak to Mr. Flynn about setting up those interviews.
thank you.
Any questions, any other questions? Okay. I didn't have any questions, so opening up to the public, please raise your hand.
Can we get a clarification on that first item?
Wait,
before
wait. We're gonna do this where everybody raise their hand, we'll come up onto the podium, and then we'll, address everything from the podium.
Point of
So,
information before we do comment?
Mr.
There was,
Mr. Van Wyk?
there was that one item that you were discussing that we don't have. Is it possible we could get a reading of what that issue was about payment, of
Sure, when you come to the podium, we'll be happy to answer your question at that point. Wait. Mr. Van Wagner, I gotta go with people who raise their hands first, all right?
I was just asking for a point of information.
I know, but I'm trying to keep it fair for everybody.
Right.
So, to the extent people have their hands raised first, I'm gonna call on them and I'll get to you next, all
Sure.
right?
They may also want to comment on this item that we haven't had the opportunity to hear yet.
Sure.
Which is why I thought it might be prudent to suggest that, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Henderson, you're the first one.
David Henderson, Hamilton Township. Coincidentally, I'm gonna ask questions about the same item that Mr. Van Wagner is interested in.
Coincidentally.
Coincidentally. So it's my understanding that you added an agenda item 3, which is to cover revisions in the case management plan.
Yes, sir.
Can we get an explanation of that?
You most certainly can. So, at the last council meeting, And every year, council has to pass a cash management plan that's generally put forward to us by the chief financial officer. It's something that's done on a yearly basis, and it's usually either the first council meeting of the month or the last council meeting of the prior year. There were some amendments that were made to the plan that were proposed by Mr. Barrett and worked out between the council and the administration in terms of certification of fund of purchase orders and certification of funds on council agenda items and how that would work. One thing that was not changed was designation of municipal official authorization in terms of signing checks. So I know definitely in 2018 and in the cash management plan we passed at the last council meeting, there was only 2 people listed there, and you need 2 signatures, the mayor and the chief financial officer. It was brought to our attention by the administration that given the status of our chief financial officer, it would be an impossibility to fulfill that requirement to be able to sign checks that need to go to vendors, things like that. Working with Mr. Kenny, we came up with the idea of a 2-part system, a primary system which represents somebody from the administration, namely in this case the mayor and the business administrator, and then part 2 of that is somebody with the financial background to look into the books and make sure the money's there and done properly and recorded properly. The CFO, the assistant director of finance, and the budget officer.
Thank you. So one was passed in December, and now we have revisions because there are personnel issues.
One was passed 2 weeks ago, yes, sir.
Okay, now we have issues because we had to revise it because there's personnel issues.
I think that's a fair statement.
So I think I have 2 questions to that end with the personnel issues, and the first question would be, I was given to understand that the administration had quite some time, and we're given notice that our budget officer was going to be retiring on December 31st, and it was my understanding that they knew that sometime at least in October. So my question would be, how did they let this get away and not have somebody to replace them, and why do we have an empty budget director? Because it exacerbates the problem considering what they did to Mr. Barrett. Now we have an empty budget director. It would have been better planning if they had arranged to have somebody to take over when our retiring budget director left. We're 2 weeks into the new year and we have no chief financial officer. It was my understanding we had nobody who even signed checks the last couple of days. Why didn't we have a plan? Why did Mr. Kenny allow this township to get into the situation that we're in?
Well, are we talking about the resolution, or?
Oh, let's talk about why you let us get into the situation we're in here in Hamilton Township financially. We have no CFO. We have no budget director. From what I heard, we have nothing on the horizon to fill either of those positions.
Well,
What do we do? Are we a ship foundering at sea, Mr. Kenny?
No, we're not.
Yeah, we are.
The director,
Who signed checks today?
All right, Mr. Henderson, we can.
the budget
I'm
director.
sorry, Mr. President.
The budget director completed the budget before she left. It's obviously subject to our determination of revenue, and then going back to it, and then coming to the council. We've interviewed some people. My initial plan has not worked out. We interviewed a very good candidate this week who's going to take the job, I believe, and should be here within a couple of weeks. We've interviewed some other people previously. Unfortunately, they didn't have the qualifications that we really wanted.
Was that advertised?
I'm not certain if Mr. Guarino advertised it or not. I'm not sure.
That has to be advertised, is that correct?
It does not have to be advertised.
You guys requested it.
I thought that was supposed to be advertised,
No, we're looking at a civil service transfer.
a civil service transfer.
Transfer of this.
Mr. Henderson, next question.
3 Oscar, Adele Avenue. I think it's a great thing that we're demolishing a dilapidated, dangerous structure. I'll harken back to May when I came in and I presented on behalf of 2 gentlemen that live on State Street. I believe it was 1378 State Street. It was a row house, structurally unsound, impacting the row houses on either side. Mr. Kenny explained to me that it couldn't be addressed because it would need to be demolished by hand. And it was gonna be too costly. And the health officer and the building inspector went out there and put a sticker on it the next day that said uninhabitable, agreed that it was a unsafe structure, agreed that it was impacting the houses on either side, but we didn't take any action to help those gentlemen. That house is still falling down, it's still impacting their houses. Why do we have selective, I mean, I know Mr. Kenny said over the last couple meetings that he uses his discretion to apply the ordinances and enforcement of the ordinances. Why do we have selective choice on which houses we're gonna demolish and which we're not? Why can't we get something done at this house on East State Street? Is it because it's in Bromley?
There's a difference between a house that is in danger of imminent collapse, which is what the Adela house is. I don't believe anyone ever found the East State Street property was in danger of imminent collapse. We had to move the people in the adjoining houses out from the Adela Avenue property because of the safety concern.
Your building inspector expressed a concern that the house would collapse and impact the houses on either side.
On Adela Avenue? Yes.
On State Street.
I don't recall that on State Street.
Well, you might not recall it, but the two homeowners on either side were there and he told them that.
Well, he did not move forward, and Mr. Lumbia was involved in this Adela Adela Street house situation. He's the one who said.
All right, we're getting you double speak, Mr. President, is there some way we can have equal application of justice instead of having selective?
So, Mr. Henderson, I see in my notes you did bring that issue up, but I don't have the addresses. If you could provide the addresses to council, we'll follow up with Mr. Kenny.
It's in the 1300 block, I'll get the exact, I think it's 1378. I'll get you the exact.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wishing to comment on the consent agenda?
Sure,
Okay.
but Doug, are you gonna give me first dibs? Thank you, Mr. President. Mark Van Wagner, 235 Hanson Avenue, the best darn street in Hamilton Township. So, two things. Item number 3, which I didn't know, and now I have a little better sense of it. And I have a deep sense of dread. I'm deeply concerned. I'm aware that the individual whom I believe had extraordinary integrity and honesty and done a fine job, CFO John Barrett, named 2 individuals in a complaint filed to the Finance Board as an ethics complaint, a business agent and Rich Mulrine, as he had concerns about the fact that they were involved in financial improprieties or financial misconduct. And in this pecking order that we're looking to set up on this particular item, it would name 2 of those 2 individuals as 2 of the 4. Of course, one of the seats is currently vacant, 2 of the seats are currently vacant. So I don't feel comfortable. I don't think you should feel comfortable with that. And I also don't know if the idea of bringing a temporary CFO even meets the needs or the requirements of the state in regard to a chief financial officer and the statutes. So I would only encourage you, before you make any decision on that you get clarity from the state of New Jersey as to its efficacy and whether or not it's permissible under these conditions. I had the impression that the suspension isn't even permitted because it has to be requested and then approved by the director. I don't know if that's something perhaps you can look into or have the administration look into. So in that regard, my concerns are duly noted. On the other one I had, which was the veterinarian issue, I think, which was double Q. We had a conversation at a prior council meeting about a billing concern where items were being purchased and taken directly to the veterinarian's home, and billing was coming after the fact, which lacked adequate clarity in terms of invoice. I'll just say normal invoicing. And then there was an opportunity, I guess, after the fact to go back and get the taxes back returned to the township, which we had paid, if in fact we paid that invoice. And I'm wondering if whether or not the administration has had a chance to resolve that issue with the veterinarian going forward, so we don't encounter that same issue again. We don't have our product being shipped to a third-party address, and we don't miss the opportunity for discounts and state tax waiver.
Do you know if that issue was looked into as it relates
Yes,
to this resolution?
Veterinarian supply houses will not supply directly to a municipality unless there's a supervising vet who signs off on it. Dr. Bowden has worked with our purchasing department to set up the account directly so that the medicines can go directly to the shelter under her supervision. But prior to that time, they would not ship to, they will not ship to a shelter. There has to be supervising vet that's on the purchase order and on the delivery.
And the issue of the state sales tax, has been resolved from the previous billing and going forward so that we're able to take advantage of that with our?
Well, yeah, there won't be any sales tax, and we're working through it with the original supplier to get that sales tax. I think it's
Okay.
a couple $100.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. A secondary issue, which is a point of concern that goes back a little bit. Our veterinarian doctor, I'm sorry, I don't have the name in front of me, had an individual who claims to be a business associate, business partner potentially, as well as having a personal relationship. And the individual has logged on into social media and interacted with a great many people that are Hamilton residents that are deeply interested in the care and treatment of our animals through our animal shelter. And the conversations have been rather caustic. Now, while it's not an issue of contract with the veterinarian, it certainly creates a point of dissension or friction, and I'm wondering whether or not council or administration has had a chance to address that peculiar relationship and the interaction with the residents of Hamilton, which sets a very poor tone while we're attempting to hire a veterinarian whose potential business manager, I think he described himself as, is engaging in irritant conversation through social media with residents.
So our committee, the Animal Shelter Committee, met with the veterinarian and her business agent. And the contract that we're signing is with the veterinarian doing business as a business entity in order to, for him to be able to be treated as basically her employee for the purposes of interacting with the township. We did discuss the issues that you raised, and you know, I'm satisfied with moving forward. The vet, Dr. Bowden, understands that she's going to be held accountable for any actions of any of her employees. So if she wants to have an employee, that's okay, but she's going to be held accountable for the actions of that employee.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I haven't seen any further squawk, and it sounds like the conversations you had have done the job, and that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the public wishing to comment? Ms. Simon?
Good evening, Cynthia Simon, South Clinton. Couple of questions. We'll start with 3HH, the gravity thickener and the digester at the sewer plant. One thing that wasn't answered or wasn't asked by you guys or answered is this a design and build bid? Is this everything in one?
No,
Because she said something about design and then we have to go.
It's only a design, but it's being designed so they'll go out to bid so that one contractor will build both parts.
Okay.
Since we're
So we're anticipating the design itself to be $300,000?
yes. No, I think that's the design and then overseeing construction through the bid process.
So he doesn't know.
No, can we have clarification on that?
I think-
Because
All right,
I see project one
The
for
third.
153.5 and project two for 147.4. So I just wanna have a little explanation of that.
Ms. Simon, do you wanna, while we're looking for
Okay,
this to speak?
so
to us
we'll go to the next one then,
Yeah.
although probably
No,
gonna,
I
you're
think
gonna
I
be
have it
flipping
for you.
through. Okay.
All right, the engineer shall provide the following design services, following bid support, and following services during construction services, and then also on-site inspection. So the
That was-
engineer will be there from beginning to end.
So this is just the engineer to design and oversee the project?
Correct.
So there'll still be another bid process for the actual construction?
For the contractor,
So
yes.
we're gonna have more money to spend?
Yes.
But this 300,000 then is for the complete design through build and completion with the engineer. We don't see anything else for the engineer for this. This is only, okay. Can't wait to see the build costs. So the next one is 3II. We have a number of architects listed to be on call for special consultant services for the calendar year. My question is, do we always use this many architects? I know we had, conversations about prior engineering firms with the sewer. We use a lot for people that are on call. Have we always kind of done a blanket order with all of these architects?
Yes, you'll see it's a $10,000 combined maximum.
No, I understand that.
So, we may use one, we may use two or three.
Have we
maybe
used
some.
any of these architects in the last few years?
Um,
Other than, there's only actually, going back through the last 8 years of capital budget that I have records of, we've only used Mr. Neville for thousands and thousands of dollars. He was the animal shelter architect as well as other special projects. So I have not seen any of these other architects paid. So I'm just curious, do we do this and we still only go to Mr. Neville? It would just kind of be nice to see share the wealth, I guess. Because if you look at, just doing a simple query, we paid Mr. Neville. I actually, I searched for all of these other architects and none of them came up with a payment since 2008. So I was just kind of,
And I don't think we've
2010.
I don't think we've used Mr. Neville recently.
no, actually the last payment that we used to Mr. Neville was in calendar year 18, maybe late 17 or early 18. No, we haven't. And we actually haven't, based on the information I have, we hadn't paid any architect. But my just concern is, since 2010, through the records I have, Mr. Neville was the only architect that we paid for anything.
My
And I understand,
recollection
obviously,
is,
the animal shelter
I
is
want
a
to try to
separate
help
thing.
you.
Okay.
My recollection is, Mr. Neville was the architect on the animal shelter expansion.
Right, no, I get
So
that.
therefore, it's the single largest construction project.
Right, but
in the
his
township
name was
of that
listed
type.
for other things outside. I understand the animal shelter project was probably a separate bid, I'm sure, for that project. But I'm just saying in general, for other design things that I've seen that we paid out, we didn't pay any of these other architects. So that's just the
It's more
concern.
general. The only thing I know right now is we have to redo the roof at Cougar Mansion, which will have some architectural aspects to it. It's not just like putting a roof on this building or
Right, because
a
historic
library or
things,
something.
so.
So we'll have to use somebody, I wouldn't, so I don't know if we, somebody that has more historic.
Right, I'm just, like I said, just curious, looking at, payment history and such. 3QQ, just a quick question on, and then my time's up, but what have we paid historically to Dr. Carter? Is this 70,000 comparable to what we had paid prior? Do we have this money in the budget? Is it above or below what we had budgeted?
That's comparable to what we paid Dr. Carter. This is the maximum. Frankly, I think Dr. Bowden will save us a lot of money because she's actually coming to the shelter to treat animals, which Dr. Carter doesn't do. She goes there at least 1 day a week, and so she can treat animals right while she's there. That's saving us significant money.
Right, no, I'm just curious, so the 70,000, I know it's a maximum, so, but that's in the budget. What did we have in the budget for veterinary services? Was
Last
it-
year,
Yeah, or,
it was in that same ballpark.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Ms. Pfeiffer.
Terry from Hampton.
Thank you.
See, I'm getting better. Couple of things. One is on 3G through 3J. It says appointing, not reappointing. All of those to the vital statistics, either as a registrar or a deputy registrar, whatever, or an alternate. Are they all from the health department? I couldn't find that out.
All the registrars would be, yes. I'm looking at it.
And have they done that before, or is this something new? Because it doesn't say that
No,
it's
they all
reappointed.
have, with the, well, Nicole Moeller is fairly new, but she is a licensed registrar. The other three have been here quite a while.
And have they been registrars before, or is this something new, because it doesn't
No,
say
they-
reappointing?
They've been registrars before. I remember their names from last year.
Okay, it was just the wording, and I just want a clarification. I also, again, it's a clarification, on the contract, it's a contract clarification, okay? On, 3QQ, okay? This $70,000, does that include the animals that are taken to Columbus? Because Dr. Carter's last year was $58,000, and that included the animals that we took to Morrisville Animal Hospital. So I'm just trying to understand, because I don't have the contract, you guys have the contract, so I don't understand what this covers. Does this cover the animals we take to Columbus also, or is that gonna be another expense that we haven't addressed yet?
Yes, my understanding is that would not cover, because she's not Columbus. She,
Okay, and that's because they're two different entities?
yes.
Okay, so that's what I was wanting to make sure, because Dr. Carter was one entity that we billed $58,000 to, or had a cap of $58,000. And he did it, that all. I know he didn't come to the shelter, okay, but we're only spending, what, 10 hours a month at the shelter, 1 day a week for a couple hours. So I'm trying to figure out contractually the cost to the, it's nothing about the doctor or anything like that. I'm talking about a contract, an expense to us, the township, okay? Where is the money coming from to take care of all those animals that we're sending to Columbus when that was covered under our prior years from 2014 and beyond, before that maybe?
Well, we have to budget money because a lot of the animals have to go to North Star in the middle of the night and things like
Okay.
that. They pick up an animal on
Okay.
the road that's injured, they go right to North Star.
I understand that, but $58,000 was budgeted last year to cover our animals and the vet. And now you're telling me we're gonna budget $70,000 just for the vet, with only the 1 day a week seeing animals. I don't understand it. I'm struggling with this as contractually.
We think it's a very reasonable number in the scheme of things, because to have the shelter up and running, much better than it was under prior veterinary services. You know, Dr. Carter did a great job, but he wasn't coming to the shelter. Now we have to get the shelter. So we think it's warranted, and obviously the council will look at it in the budget session as well.
Well, but if it's already approved, then aren't their hands tied in the budget session?
No, it's contingent on money being appropriated.
So if the council only appropriates $50,000 for animal or veterinary care, right, it doesn't matter what the maximum here is because the number budgeted supersedes that.
Okay, I thought this would, then we'd have to have another line item for, and we'd be incurring another cost. That's why I wanted a clarification on what we're, thank you.
Anybody else from the public wishing to comment on the consent agenda items? Yes, ma'am.
Lisa Quattro, Better Line Avenue, Hamilton Township. I want a clarification from Mr. Kenny when he said that the vet now comes to the shelter and to treat the animals. Where are the supplies housed that she's treating these animals with, and who has access to them?
They're held in the shelter and safe, and she's the one who has access to them.
Only her.
I think the animal control officers would have access as well.
Okay, so do they do
He
any
thinks.
treating of the animals?
No, other than administration of medicine that she's prescribed.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions or comments from the public on just the consent agenda items? That's right, you get a second 3 minutes done with the new rules.
That's right, I do. So, if you sign up, but now, back to 3HH and the digester. Now, we actually paid out $309,000 to pump out the digester because it's not working. So the question is, why are we paying another company to come and pump it out and haul the waste away to some other place who has a working digester? Why, we have a pump truck, we have equipment, we have staff,
why aren't we doing this work ourselves, and then taking it? So, so we're actually paying someone to come and clean it up and haul it away and paying a premium to dump it, where there's gotta be, a better way, and these are cheaper fix, our own staff, our own equipment. I understand we have a broken piece of equipment, that I get. We're gonna spend $300,000 just to design a fix, which I think is a bit ridiculous. But how many times are we gonna have to pay $300,000 to another third party outside of our payroll and our control until it's fixed? I mean, that's just something we need to ask the sewer department. It's something, you guys can have a copy of this if you want. You can actually have copies of all the invoices that I have here if you want. But that's gonna raise a concern that, we've already spent $300,000. We're gonna spend $300,000 design. We don't know what construction costs are gonna be. We need to try and get a little bit of a control on this to figure out how we can better spend our dollars. I know we'll argue that the sewer's a separate entity and it raises its own money and all of that, but this is a lot of money that should be addressed as part of all of this bid process and how we're spending.
Can I just
So,
comment on
of
that?
all this.
Let me just comment on that. If you've ever taken a tour of the sewer facility, it's quite old. And I will tell you, the work that has been undertaken for many years to repair, to keep it running so it doesn't break down, because if it breaks down, we're all in trouble. So there's a lot of money being, and there's specialties in terms of companies and organizations that you require certain specialties and certifications to be able to move things and transport things.
But I would think that we as a sewer plant and a wastewater treatment plant, we would have those abilities within our own organization. I understand, the sewer infrastructure may be old, but I also know that we pay a lot to maintain it. And it's, obviously, we do a really good job of maintaining it because we don't have super high maintenance costs. But when you're looking at $300,000 for a design issue, we haven't even thought about construction. And then, we're paying someone to come and do this. I have to think that we're qualified to.
Truly,
We have
go
to have-
request a tour of that facility so you can see the actual equipment that they're talking about fixing. I mean, it's.
Well, I'm not talking
it's-
about the fix, but I'm talking about the we have equipment to.
I understand, but if you see what they're actually applying this to, it really makes sense when you see it.
Well, I'm not
Yeah.
disputing the fix. I mean, it's scary, the cost, I don't think, if you're just looking at, if the design is $300,000, I have to assume construction's gonna be at least 3 to 4 times that cost. I mean, I understand that. I'm just looking at, we keep having all these other incremental things and these little Band-Aid fixes. It's gonna keep adding up, so.
Dave, so this is, Kleinfeld is basically a response to not put a Band-Aid on it anymore, just make sure that we have a comprehensive plan in place.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, as I recall, no, we had to pay someone, we don't have the trucks to transport the amount that had to be pumped out, nor do we have the pumping ability to pump out the digester, when this had happened, when it failed. And so, you don't have every type of equipment. I also note our sewer rate is about 50% of Elsa's, Stony Brook, everybody else around here. We're about 50% on sewer rate of theirs.
So they make
So,
it 40%.
I think it has been efficiently run, and Mrs. Schirmer's correct. It's an older facility. We put a lot of money into capital over the years, and it's something that we have to continue to do, unfortunately. And DEP continues to make requirements even more and more stringent.
Not true.
That affect what you have to do in terms of capital spending as well.
I understand. Do we know if, I'm sorry, I don't remember, that the digester is running efficiently enough that we don't have to have another $300,000 expense to pump things out? Are we anticipating that to happen again, or are we at least running at a minimum amount enough that we don't have to do this
Yeah,
again? Do we know
I
that?
don't, Gary hasn't told me she anticipates having to pump one out again. I think that once we cleaned it, it became somewhat more efficient.
Until we get there.
It's a Band-Aid until we replace it.
Thank you.
Let me see if there's any other first timers. Any other first timers for public comment, just on the consent agenda? Mr. Anderson, please.
David Henderson.
I'd like to point out the documents that Ms. Simon gave to the council. There's some documents in there with invoices and some sheets from the audit. And they are from the capital budget. And the $309,000, which encompasses two charges, one $150,000 invoice from Russell Reed and one $159,068.64 from Russell Reed. Those are both taken out of the capital budget. Those are operating expenses. And I'll renew my question that I asked back in December. Why do we keep charging operating expenses in the capital budget? Capital budget's supposed to be anything that's a capital expense, supposed to be depreciated over 5 years or more. We're borrowing money at 3.8% and paying to pump out the digester. I mean, I have a lot of questions as to why the digester went bad. Digesters just don't go bad. Something happened with that. Somebody did something. And they're just pumping that digester out and taking it to another sewage treatment plant.
Mr. Kenny, are you able to tell from those documents whether it came out of capital or not?
It's right on the sheet. The two sheets that you have that have the highlighted items, the $150,000 and the $159,638.64 are both capital budget.
It looks like it did come out of the capital budget.
Why?
Well, I don't know, Mr. Barrett was signed off on it, and Kara signed off on it.
I think it's unfair to mention Mr. Barrett's name. I think he's not the one that wrote the checks. I think the budget director would write the checks there. That's where it comes from. The budget director decides where the checks are written. And you're hiding operating expenses. You're hiding, excuse me, go ahead.
That's not true, Mr. Henderson. The budget director, the CFO, has to certify what account is coming out and whether it's appropriate or not. So.
Well,
And
we can reserve
I don't
that,
know what the,
we can reserve that discussion. I guess you're gonna have that discussion at some other point in the future when the lawsuit is adjudicated. But I guess, Mr. President, the question I would ask you is why is the administration hiding operating expenses in the capital budget? I mean, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I pointed out pansies. We bought pansies there. Now we're pumping out digesters. I'm sorry, somebody's screaming from the back.
Yeah. Let's
One
keep
of
the
the
comments.
ignorant township employees.
All right.
I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. I'm talking about you.
From the crowd, he is on the consent agenda. There's an item relating to digesters, so we're talking about that. And I'm allowing some leeway, like I have for a lot of people, in bringing it.
Well,
Mr. Henderson, I think what we can do is we're going to get into the budget process probably here in the next 2 months. And I think council will have the opportunity to explore the OE issues versus capital issues and all that in more detail moving forward when we do the budget.
Thank you. One more thing on the digester. Oh, go ahead, Mr. President.
You're out of time, sorry.
Can I come back a third time?
Anybody else on the consent agenda, first time or second time? Any other comments or questions from council on the consent agenda? I know I have one. I think Mr. Van Wagner made a good point on the secondary people on the cash management plan. And I think it would be helpful, especially since we don't have a budget officer, we don't know. I think it would be beneficial to take off the budget officer and put on the purchasing officer, like we had in the certification of funds, maybe? I don't know how the rest of the council feels about that, but I think it would be good to have 2 people on there.
Yeah, the purchasing agent signs all the vouchers for the purchasing agent generally.
So that would be the only other change I would recommend that we haven't already talked about with the cash management plan. So anything else from council given?
So I move consent agenda items. I move all consent agendas listed earlier.
With the amendments.
With the amendments, as amended.
See? Madam Clerk, roll call please.
Ms. Schirmer?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Carabelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes, and I just want to say, with the appointments that we're making tonight, many of them are reappointments. I just want to thank people who submitted their names and resumes. We had a chance, Mr. Ty and I, to meet with Mr. Kenny and Mr. Flynn, to go over some of these, and the response we got was absolutely amazing. And the people in this town who have impeccable credentials, impeccable qualifications, and want to be involved in helping their town, was really uplifting. So if you're in the audience or you're watching at home, and you did submit your name, I just want to say thank you very much. So now we're moving on to ordinances, first reading ordinance.
4A is ordinance 19-2001, an ordinance amending and supplementing the code of ordinances Hamilton Township, New Jersey, chapter 45, vehicles and traffic, article 2, parking, subsection 45, handicap parking. This is to establish a space at 2025 South Clinton Avenue. This is first reading and introduction.
Mr. President, I move to adopt, I move on first reading ordinance 19-001.
I'd like to second that.
Madam Clerk, roll call please.
Ms. Schirmer?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Carabelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Passes 5-0. Ordinance 19-002. An ordinance accepting the deed of sanitary sewer easement for Riyadh Lodging Group Hamilton 2 LLC for block 2610, part of block 37.01, New Jersey State Highway Route 130. This is first reading and introduction.
I'd like to make a motion to move on first reading, ordinance number 4B, 19-002.
Second.
And just for members of the audience, there was recently, I think we said in 2018, the zoning board approved a new hotel on Route 130, and so this provides the easement for that new hotel in the sewer. So, Madam Clerk, roll call please.
Ms. Schirmer?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Mr. Carabelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Passes 5-0. 4C is ordinance 19-003. An ordinance to vacate, release, and extinguish any and all dedication of public rights or any public rights which may appear to come into being in a portion of a 12-foot wide alley, alley number 106, lying between Samuel Street and Lily Street in the Township of Hamilton, County of Mercer, State of New Jersey. This is first reading and introduction.
Mr. President, I'd like to move ordinance 19-003 on first reading.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, roll call before you do again. So this is an ordinance that will eliminate the township's right of way for an alleyway that is situated between Bird Avenue and Madam Clerk, roll call.
Ms. Schirmer?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Carabelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Okay, we're gonna move on to comment from the public. As always, we'll start with the sign-up sheet. As soon as I have it, I'll call this up first. And if you weren't here last time, again, the rules are 5 minutes for the first time, 3 minutes for the second time. Bruce Engel, first time.
How you doing?
Mr. Engel, can you just give your name and where you live?
Bruce Engel, 159 Applegate Drive.
Thank you, sir.
Just, where to begin? I think I'll leave it to the nice people behind me to probably cover everything from the animal shelter, the Oprah request lawsuits, the Facebook federal courts, and now the CFO. But I'm from Hamilton Township. 3 generations I've been here. I've born on Scammell Avenue, moved to Sylvan, now I live on Applegate Drive. My dad grew up in the area, my mom, so I have a really deep-rooted concern. And I love Hamilton. I am Hamilton. So I'm going to stay in Hamilton. But there's a lot of concerns that I have. quite honest with you, I'm pretty mad at a few of the items. But Dave, Mr. Henderson here, brought up one of the most obvious, so I'm just gonna start on East State Street. We have houses that have been there now for years. They have a fence around it, you can't walk down the street. And I don't know how anybody doesn't see it as being a major problem. I don't know how the Bromley people aren't coming up every single meeting complaining and arguing about what's happening with those houses, what can be done, what the choices are, and there might be. But for the amount of time, it's really gotten ridiculous. But continue down East State Street. Go to the corner of East States and Johnson, there's another house, it's ready to fall down, looks completely horrendous for the town. Let's travel even further. You got a vacant lot on the left-hand side on the corner of Garfield. Let's make a left turn on Garfield. So that corner site, been an abandoned site, probably would have been a really good site to discuss and use maybe COA funds to discuss something with affordable housing, potentially a good spot. You know, the owner could have gone to the neighborhood behind that on Walnut. So continue through Garfield, let's go all the way down Garfield, over Greenwood, down to Liberty Street, make a right-hand turn, go down Liberty Street, Golden Avenue. You know, if you notice my path of travel, we're all bordering on the city of Trent. If we start looking at those houses along the Hamilton side, pull up some of the values of the appraised value or the assessed value. The assessed value of those houses, and then look at the sold, what has been being sold in the last 2 years, are lower than what the assessed value is. Which goes to say that if every one of those neighbors woke up and decided to come in and actually appeal their taxes, we would really start having some tax issues, because now we have the whole areas of that section causing an influx in taxes, which I think is a concern. A lot of it needs to be addressed. I just don't think it's being addressed. I don't know where they stand with the master plan review. I think the master plan is something to really look at. Rezoning changes, there's just on and on and on and on questions that I have, all the way down Layler Street, South Broad Street. The more that those property values go down, the taxes are gonna go up. I live out in Hamilton on Applegate Drive. My taxes are already paying at the highest, well, not the highest, but fairly close in Hamilton Township. I don't want to see my taxes continually to go up because of other areas that are being highly neglected. I don't know what the mayor's plan is. So, you know, it's upsetting that she got an invitation. She should be here. There's a lot of people with a lot of questions. I have tons of them. I set up a meeting with her. She didn't show. I had a good pleasure of meeting with Marty Flynn, and you know, I respect him highly. It was a good meeting. He took a lot of ideas. I'm a real estate broker, so I have lots of input. There's probably nobody that knows every single street in this town more than I do, and what's on it and what's being built on it. So it was a good meeting. He said it would be rescheduled. It was never rescheduled. To be honest with you, it's 2019. It's an election. I really don't care if it ever gets rescheduled at this point. But I'd love to debate all the issues because there's nothing being done. I see her sign that was supposed to be here at the chair. There's a no-show. I don't get it. Dave, was there any feedback to why she did not attend, or is she scheduled to attend it in the council
I'm
meeting?
not aware she was scheduled to attend the council meeting.
Not that she was scheduled.
Never heard.
I know there was an invitation.
I'm not aware of any invitation to attend the council meeting.
She has an open invitation.
So wait, so you guys did, so was that wrong? I read it in the paper, so I didn't, clarify. Council did invite or did not invite?
We did invite
Does she need a written invitation on a big card?
We gave her one.
her. It was a written.
Okay, so now Dave, I'm gonna take it back to you. They tell me that it was, you say it wasn't, so which one is it?
I never heard of it. I'm not gonna dispute them, but I never heard of it.
So I guess the email doesn't count for
Okay.
David's copy.
So I guess the question is can you ask her? Or how do we ask her? If that's not good enough, should I show up in the open door policy and walk in and ask? What's an open door policy? I don't know.
You mentioned a couple of things about some of the other neighborhoods, and that's a problem. You mentioned the master plan review. That was taken out of the budget in 2018. The master plan review was cut out by the council, so we didn't do a master plan review. In terms of the East State Street houses,
I'm sorry, I said, did the council cut that out?
yes.
The last one was 2011.
Yeah, they decided to cut that from the budget, and that was certainly their discretion to do that. But with regard to East State Street, we are in the process, those are gonna be donated to Habitat for Humanity, those homes. But there have been title issues. I think we're getting pretty close now. Mike's been working through where we can take title to all of those homes. There's liens on those homes. There's some environmental issues potentially that some had oil tanks in the basements that we have to work through, those kinds of things. So that's not easy, and it was also all part of our affordable housing plan so that we can use affordable housing money, which is not taxpayer money, it's all developer fees that we've collected over the years, to renovate those, give the land to Habitat for Humanities, and let them build homes there.
And Mr. Engel, so we're out of the 5 minutes. There's a second 3 minutes, and I'll bring you back up if you want to come up to address the witness as well.
Please, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Henderson's next.
David Henderson, Hamilton Township. So, just before the last council meeting, the mayor unleashed a press release that was sent to the newspaper, and she talked about decorum. And what she failed to do, and she claimed politics and the Democrat council wasn't keeping proper order in the council chamber. What she failed to mention was that the majority of the disruption in this council chamber comes from her own people. We've had an example, Ken Enderly in the back jumped up twice tonight, screaming out, trying to change the agenda. And he's the one that's causing the problem. I haven't seen any other problems here tonight. I commend you for gaveling him down and maintaining order, but I think that you sent an invite to the mayor to come to the meeting. Somebody ought to send her a memo or a letter or an email and let her know that it's her people that are causing the disruption of the decorum in this meeting. We have 3 police officers out in the hallway. I find that horrendous. They don't want to be there. They want to be out doing their job and protecting the public. And we have 3 officers that are now out in the hallway because guys like Ken Enderly are jumping up screaming in the council chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Ms. Simon?
I'm good.
Waves. Mr. Van Wagner?
I don't know what to say.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mark Van Wagner, 235 Hanson Avenue. As I drove here tonight, past our world-class ecological facility, beautiful place, I'm there often, I saw the grader. It's a beautiful sight, $400,000 of rusting equipment. I point that out because it serves as a symbol for the inefficiency of the purchasing and the way in which we use our equipment. What I'd like to get, for starters, is an explanation as to what the $5,800 was we paid for an Oprah judgment in December. $5,800 paid in the case between David Henderson and the Township of Hamilton as a judgment. Did I get an explanation as to that?
Mr. Ballard, Mr. Kenny, you guys know anything about that?
That would be legal fees. The attorney sought $10,000, the judge cut it down to $5,800.
If I'm not mistaken, there was a settlement offer by the attorney representing Mr. Henderson of $4,000, which was rejected.
I'm not aware of that. I wasn't involved in those negotiations at all. That would have been Mr. Burbidge.
I worry about that because if in fact we did incur $1,800 of additional costs through the rejection, that it was not a prudent decision. But if it was a prudent decision made out of just poor judgment, I would say, okay. But I worry too that it is not made out of poor judgment, it was made out of attempt to prevent council from seeing the final thing because it doesn't have to go before them, because if it's a judgment, it doesn't require approval by council. And we've talked repeatedly about Oprah payments. So this is $5,800, and I saw the looks on council's faces here, and they didn't know what that was about. Do we think that the $5,800 that we had to pay versus the $4,000 was a result of a decision made by legal counsel to prevent that final payment from going through council and therefore through the public's eye?
I don't think that's a fair question.
I'm sorry?
I don't think that's a fair question.
Okay, so it's an unfair question, but I'm asking it because I'm very cynical at this point.
Speculation on the part of Mr. Kenny Robbins.
Okay, well, I can respect that. Perhaps we could get in touch with, anyway, you know what, I'll leave it out there. I think it stands on its own. In either event, $1,500 versus $4,000, it means we incurred not only the $4,000 that we would have paid for the settlement for an Oprah failure, but we ended up paying another $1,800 on top of that because of a legal decision failure. I have a question about Rich Mulrine and the fact that he was breaking into the chief financial officer's office. Has there been any, and by the way, this is the same individual that was named in a complaint by the CFO to the finance board in an ethics complaint. Do we have any information as to what action was taken relative to that employee breaking into that office?
I'm not aware of any break-in. That's.
Perhaps I've counted incorrectly.
That's an absurd characterization.
What would you describe it as?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Mr. Mulrine going into John Barrett's offices late at night, into John Barrett's office late at night.
I don't know what the basis for your information is.
Videotape.
Okay.
The video that was installed by Mr. Barrett in the office, okay.
So you know about it.
So you know.
Okay, well, no, I learned about it because I saw it on a video.
I think that's fair. That's kind of how I found about it too, is that I saw a video of this individual going into the office of the chief financial officer after he had been named as an individual with potential financial improprieties by the chief financial officer. So yeah, any idea why he was there?
I'm gonna direct, council and staff, not to answer any questions or comment about anything involving, the former, chief financial officer, due to the fact that I was advised this afternoon.
When did he become former?
Suspended, I'm sorry, suspended. But I was advised this afternoon that suit had been filed against individuals in the township as well as the township of Hamilton by that individual. And therefore, it's a matter of pending litigation, so I'm gonna advise everyone that the dais would please not address anything regarding that at this time. I do not know what the allegations are, I don't know how extensive, because we have not seen anything, but we were told that a suit had been filed.
Thank you, Mr. Bullitt. Just a quick note here. I mean, again, we're talking about, and tonight we came up with several different issues about a chief financial officer who, to my knowledge, has always been a pillar of repute here in the town. And it was only after this individual actually reported what he perceived to be inappropriate financial activity by certain individuals, including 2 immediate family members of the mayor, that he is now out on suspension. And in the minutes of the council meeting on April 7th, 2015, I note that Mr. Pone thanked everybody that was there, including Mr. Ritchie, Mr. Barrett, and Ms. Leverance, and by stating that Hamilton had the most professional and knowledgeable staff. And I believe that remained true, so I'm a little puzzled, and I hope we get this resolved without too much further damage to our township. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Trish Gray?
Trish Gray, Aspen Pink Boulevard. I wanted to follow up with you, Mr. Kenny, on some things that came up last year and to see where things stand now. So, Councilman Ty had asked you a while ago if there was anything we could be done about the garbage flying off the garbage trucks on 2nd Avenue in Assunpink. So I want to follow up and see if you reached out to the company to see if anything can be done.
I'm trying to recall, I would reach out to Mr. Carruthers to contact them if there's an issue with trash like that. Reach out to the contractor that does that for the township. So, is it an ongoing problem on 2nd Avenue?
Because the plant's right there, so the garbage flies off.
Let me follow up on that.
Okay. I also want to follow up on the corner of Whitehead and Sweetbriar, the area that needs to be dredged, that we've discussed before. You said it's not the township's responsibility. However, the township is supposed to be working with the Army Corps of Engineers since 2014. The report was due in 2016. It's 2019. Wanted to know where the status of the report is.
Mr. Williams consistently follows up with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they still have not issued a report. And unfortunately, that's not unusual with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay, if it's not our responsibility, then why is this the town that's working with them? Because I'm kind of thinking it is our responsibility, that corner.
We're not permitted to dredge a stream. We would have,
But what are you doing to get that corner cleaned up so it doesn't keep flooding?
You mean within the stream bed itself? You would want it dredged?
It used to be.
It used to be dredged all the time, I agree with you, I remember
Yeah.
as a kid always seeing it dredged.
And it contributes to the flooding in that area.
We're not permitted to dredge it, that's why we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers, they would have to be the one, or the state, to dredge it. We cannot, as a township, go
Well, can
and
you go
dredge
to the state? That's what I'm asking, what is being done to get this moving?
I know that Mr. Williams contacts the Army Corps of Engineers all the time about that, so I assume they have primary jurisdiction.
Are you reaching out to the state?
I don't know if he's reached out to the state or not.
Can you follow up with that?
I will.
Thank you. And then, I believe in the summertime you had mentioned about the sidewalks, and if the township plant trees and the sidewalks are coming up, that you needed people to, is that correct? If the sidewalks are broken up because of trees the township planted, that the township needs to know about it?
That happens, absolutely, yeah, that's a problem.
Okay, so, this is, so that's all along Whitehead Road between First Avenue and 7th Avenue. And there's areas, especially if it rains, that you can't even walk because the puddles are so deep, and you can't walk on Whitehead because it's flooded because there's no drains on Whitehead. So can someone come out and look at that?
Yeah, I will definitely have Mr. Williams or Mr. Brothers, because, yeah, these are broken up rather badly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And lastly, I'd just like to say, as a whole, that this whole thing with Mr. Barrett and what's happening to him, what's going on in this township is disgusting. I mean, just, people are looking at this on a national level, and it's embarrassing. You know, someone who had a great reputation, all of a sudden is doing a lousy job that he has to put on leave. Yet people who clearly broke the law at the shelter are still being paid. This is just awful. And I really hope the council can do something about this and get to the bottom of it, because this township is sinking back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Ms. Pfeiffer?
I'm sorry, Dave, can you, regarding the Army Corps of Engineer, can you have Rich Williams draft up a memo to council as to what steps he's taken, how often he's reached out, at least within the last year and this year? Just write up and not just, reached out, but to actually give us what the conversations were and what's been taking place, and what's the hold up.
Hi, Terry from Hamilton. Last time we were here, we talked about the dumping of feral cats into cat colonies from the shelter, and I was wondering, you were gonna look into that, and I was wondering, have you gotten an answer regarding that?
The answer I've gotten is the only feral cats, when they are picked up, they're taken to a rescue center, a farm in Burlington or Ocean County, I think it is.
And do you know where that is?
I don't recall the name of it.
Can you get that for us? You can email it to me, okay? That would be great. Okay. And how many cats have we taken to this feral farm?
I'll get you a count.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Also, I was wondering if you could please explain to me how, and again, I'm struggling to understand this, how cats can be killed by an auto 7 days after their intake day at the shelter.
I have no idea.
In November, we had 5 cats killed by an auto 7 days after they were taken in. And in December, up to December 20th, because I haven't been able to get anything past then yet, we've had 6. Also, you should know that the shelter is coding animals that are euthanized by the vet as killed, and that's not true. So they're not properly coding them as Ds. And I understand this has minor impacts on our statistics, but we've been working on record keeping for going on 7 months now.
Hey Dave, several months, do you mind if I jump in, Terry?
Sure, but it doesn't come from my time.
Yes, it does.
No, you gotta wait. How much longer before someone's held accountable for horrible record keeping? 7 months. If you can't do the job, then take some personnel action that they don't have the skills to do the job, for God's sakes. Can we have an answer on that, when we're gonna get record keeping accurate?
I will look into that. I don't know what mistakes are being made. It's all been.
Oh, I can
It's all been electronic now, so.
No, your intake log is not electronic.
It's incorrect, Dave. I mean, we just went and looked at the records at the shelter. They're still by hand. They're still illegible. There's still inaccuracies.
And the data isn't being captured electronically, it's just this Adobe form, that's it. Okay. Last time we were here too, there was a conversation that was started by Ileana when she asked about something about the animal shelter and inspections, and you clearly said that the state told us that they wanted us to inspect the shelter, and we did. We was concerned that their actions were vis-a-vis the shelter. He was very pleasant, Dr. Campbell was very pleasant. Which upset me because that's not the process to schedule an inspection. So I went home and I wrote to the commissioner. And I asked him, I told him why I was writing, that you had stated that because of the manner in which the Hamilton Township shelter had been treated by the DOH, you implied that the next follow-up surprise inspection would be scheduled because of this, because that he was concerned about that. And you led us to believe that it was at his direction. And I got a response from him immediately, and I'm gonna read it. Not true. We are holding Hamilton to the same standard of accountability as we do every other shelter jurisdiction per our responsibility. So I'm a bit concerned about what was implied here that evening, and in my opinion, it's misleading information. Stated for the consumption of the public is not only deplorable, but it's in violation of Mayor Kelly Yates' 2013 Code of Ethics, which says you can the conduct of a public official and employee shall hold the respect and confidence of the people, and it also states that knowingly act in anything that might reasonably be expected to create any impression of suspicion among the public. And I think that did both. So I'm very disappointed at that statement and the fact that it was very misleading to us.
About scheduling an inspection?
No, that you led us to believe that it was the director of the Department of Health that wanted that done, and that wasn't. Okay, it was that Hamilton Township requested a training from Linda Fries, and that's why it was being scheduled. So.
We didn't request a training from Linda Fries.
Well, you requested a training from the Department of Health, and the commissioner point blank told me, no, he was not concerned and it was not scheduled because of his concerns. I have it in an email directly from him, and I happen to believe him. So, and I'll come back for my other thing.
Dave, several months ago, the administration led the public to believe that a computer record-keeping program had been implemented at the shelter. On our most recent inspection, Councilwoman Schirmer and I saw no evidence of any such program being used. And in our conversation with Dr. Bowden was unaware of any such program being used. So could you give us some clarification as to what happened with this computer program that was supposedly implemented to improve the record keeping at the shelter?
Well, all the forms are being entered electronically, and I saw those, and I think Mrs. Schirmer may have seen. So if they're not doing that, that's a great concern. If the people there are not doing that because it's been set up for months.
Mayor Freed?
Thank you. Dave Freed, Robbinsville. I apologize, I hate my back to people. I came tonight just on excuse me, I have a little bit of cold. Talk a little bit about the sewer. As you know, there's been a little bit of a dispute back and forth between Robbinsville and Hamilton. I just wanted to assure everyone that we want to be a good partner, we want to be a good neighbor, but we do have some concerns. In 2015, we talked a little bit about flow and filtration. We were told that we were going to spend about $3 million at the time on a $5 million bond to address infiltration, which we supported. We thought it was a good idea. The good news is we had a good result. We had about a 20% reduction, give or take, which we heard earlier about flow. And the idea was that we spent the $3 million because it was going to save us money. You can kind of imagine my surprise when I had about a 200,000 gallon reduction in flow from Robbinsville, and my bill went up about $200,000. Now Robbinsville's also on the hook for a portion of those bonds. We're paying for those bonds. So that's a concern that we're continuing to spend money in debt. And the analogy that we used for heating the house was interesting because when it was sold to us, the analogy that was used to us was solar. You invest in solar, therefore it reduces your bill. So it's a little bit of a different analogy than we're hearing now. But the challenge that we have is, I then took a look at the budget and said, well, is perhaps the rate of increase going down? We invested the money, and I can understand you have some expenses, but at least at a bare minimum, you would think that maybe our increases in budget may have slowed down. But the fact of the matter is they haven't. We've had the exact same increases that we've had year over year, even though we've invested the money and seen the decrease in flow. So that's the challenge that we're having in Robbinsville. We don't really have a good understanding as to why our flow / gallons treated have been going down, and our budget has been going up almost at the same rate. So it's a concern. We don't have any good explanations. We have further concerns that a lot of items are being pushed into capital, which again, Robbinsville's on the hook for. Many of these items are questionable at best whether they should be used for capital, golf carts, GPS, etc. So when you take a look at your debt is rapidly expanding from the township side. When we look at debt, there's a number of things that we can be using to manage the debt, i.e. the state. They have a ton of state authorities that we can be using to manage debt. Instead, what we're doing in Hamilton over the last 10 years, we're using what's called BANs, which are bond anticipation notes. Probably the worst vehicle that you can be using for long-term debt because you don't pay any principal payments. And again, I'm standing here tonight arguing if we use principal payments that Robbinsville would actually be paying more. But the idea is what you don't want to have is years and years and years of, and you can imagine to another analogy, of your home. You wouldn't want to have a interest-only bill on your home because your debt will continue to go up. You'll never pay down your bond payments, and eventually the state doesn't allow you to take more than 10 years worth of bans. So sooner or later, all of this debt is going to come home to root, which is going to hurt us all. So we really need to start looking at why we're doing this. The third question that Robbinsville had was, why are we taking bans when we were in one of the lowest interest rate periods of our lifetime? So when I start looking at why, we weren't locking in on long-term bonds, while we had low interest rates, we're now in bans. We're running out of the amount of time period that we can ban for. So we're going to have to take bonds. We're going to have to take them at a higher interest rate. So a lot of these questions that we have, we're not trying to be a good neighbor. It's not that we don't want to pay our fair share. We just want to be smart about how we're doing it. We're not getting a lot of answers back and forth. I'm not trying to get into the back and forth on what's going on with the administration. I just want to assure you, we do want to be a good neighbor. We have been paying what our original bill was 2 years ago. We had about a $1.6 million bill. Somehow it went up to $1.8 million. We've never understood why. We continue to pay the $1.6 million because, again, we want to be good neighbors. And I want to assure you that we'll continue to do so. But we really would like to have some communication with Hamilton to understand what's going on and have a little bit more input in the process so we can move forward in the future. Thank you. Thanks for letting me have you today.
Mayor Freed, I'm sorry.
Sure, yes.
You're saying that your bill went up.
Yes, ma'am. And our gallons went down, both by about 200,000 coincidentally.
Bill goes up, the gallons go down, and you received a bill for just
Correct.
recent. When did you receive the last bill?
I don't know that off the top of my head. It's been an interesting back and forth.
For the last quarter was probably around September, I guess.
Yeah. We've also received some odd letters from the CFO, so it's odd to say the least.
So regarding the bill list is, when did you receive that?
From the bills from Hamilton?
Yeah.
But we received them quarterly.
Dave, can you send us what you sent Robbinsville, you sent council? I'd like to see what he's looking at, what he's talking about.
If you'll recall, the initial agreement goes back to 19...
No, I remember all that, yeah.
And,
Almost older than I am.
And I thought it was very close to negotiations with Mr. Francioso on behalf of Robbinsville. He's no longer employed by Robbinsville. So Mayor Freed and I had a discussion. We went back to him, and we're hoping we can come to a resolution on it. But if you want to see the bills,
Yeah, we'd like to see what he's been seeing.
It's like you don't see the bill list? You
No.
guys?
Have you seen? I haven't seen the list.
No, you wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah.
Robbinsville, we actually send the bill list to the council and they approve it. Just as a good.
Wow. Novel idea.
Sorry, President. But it is good governance, you really.
So,
Anything else?
So, is sent to council?
Bill lists are always sent to council every meeting, yes. Council, we actually ask council to vote on the bill list as well, just as a member of good governance. You know, again, I don't want anyone to ever know or think that we're paying something that they weren't aware of.
Okay.
Just a good check and balance.
Hey,
We've done that for years.
one question.
Sure.
Last time you were here, we were talking about zip codes.
Yes,
Get 'em on now.
Whatever happened to the
It
zip
was
codes?
blocked by the administration.
By which administration?
Years.
We never took position.
Yeah, you did.
If you
Just telling you that the postal office will not, they will not move forward without a letter from
We
the
never
mayor.
took a position pro or con on that, and you know that's true. We reached out to the Postal Service, and you reached out to the Postal Service to see if they had ever canvassed people in Hamilton Township, and they couldn't tell either one of us if they had ever written to people in Hamilton Township about it. We never blocked it. We never did it a letter, we never did anything.
They wouldn't move forward without the mayor's approval. So I mean, if you want, we could resolve this tomorrow. You could have the mayor send a letter and we'd have it all finished.
That just seemed to die.
Mayor,
It died because the mayor won't send a letter.
Well, that's not.
Council was kind enough to send a letter.
so it wasn't, Mayor, it didn't work just having a cancel letter. It wasn't.
We are gonna file suit with the post office and we will be taking your testimony so we can then find out exactly what happened, Mr. Kenny.
Because I know you had people in the Postal Service who wouldn't respond to you either.
They have responded to us. They're waiting for Hamilton to sign off on it. If you guys would send them a letter.
Nobody's ever told us that.
So again, if we're gonna have this debate, will you be willing to send us a letter tomorrow saying you support it?
I don't have that authority.
The mayor be willing. Would you be willing to ask the mayor to do it?
Well, we wanted to find out if people in Hamilton were canvassed on how they felt about it, because we felt Hamilton residents should have some input to that. No one can tell us if they ever were canvassed or got letters from the Postal Service asking them about it.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Okay, so did the mayor ever pick up the phone? Has Mayor Yady called you about this?
Oh, yeah, we spoke about this.
Yeah, we had a
absolutely.
meeting.
But to be candid, I mean, let's just understand the issue. The issue here is not a matter of Hamilton or Robbinsville. The issue is, does anyone in Hamilton, we'll take a poll.
All right, Mr. Freed, we're just gonna address council.
Does anybody in Hamilton want to be tracked?
Mr. Freed, we're just gonna address council here.
Sorry. But anyway, the only issue here is whether or not 08691 wants to be Trenton. There is no members of 08691 in Trenton. No one in Trenton lives in 08691. No one in Trenton has ever lived in 08691. Only people in Robbinsville and Hamilton. And I can assure you, most of the people in Hamilton, I think, would rather either be Hamilton or Robbinsville than be Trenton. Right now, none of those people have that opportunity. The only opportunity they have is to be Trenton.
Mayor
I think
Freed,
most of them would rather be the other.
about how many Hamilton residents would be affected by the change?
Just the residents right around the Hamilton Marketplace, and the businesses actually at the Hamilton Marketplace, which already list themselves as Robbinsville. If you go to Home Depot, you'll get a receipt, you'll actually see that they call themselves Robbinsville and not Trenton.
I hate being Trenton. I'm 08619, and I hate when I see my husband write Trenton.
If you would write a letter to your mayor, we can get this resolved.
I applaud you for taking action on behalf of your residents on that. I mean, it's pretty sad that a zip code, but it goes in line with everything else.
Not against you on this one.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure what happened.
Thank you for having me tonight.
Gene Argenti.
Thank you, Gene Argenti, 6 Broom Drive, Richfield, New Jersey. I'm also chairman of the board of Hamilton Township Fire District Number 2. I come to you tonight to talk about the settlement agreement for the pilot program. Just to give you a little history, 2007 to 2015, there was an audit done and the fire district received $84,000 on November of 2016. In 2016, we were supposed to receive
Hey, Gene,
$13,000.
I hate to interrupt you, but can you back up? What pilot program are you talking about?
Pilot for American Metro. Would you like a
Payment
copy
in
of
lieu
it?
of taxes for American Metro.
Right, would you like a copy of it?
No, we were just
I'm,
lost.
now I'm with you. I didn't know.
We weren't sure.
Would you like a copy?
I'll take a copy. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, if we back up, they did an audit, and then they found out in 2007 to 2015, we received nothing. So they gave us $84,000 in lieu of taxes. In 2016, another audit was done. We were supposed to receive $13,893, which we did not receive. In 2017, we're supposed to get $13,674.46. still have not received this. I reached out to Mr. Kenny, he said he was looking into it, he wasn't the business administrator at the time, and 2018 is in process right now. We're just looking for the money that was owed to the fire district in this settlement, and we'd like your input on it.
Mr. Bell, I'm sure you don't know much about it.
Mr. Argenti did contact me, I looked into it, the money is due.
Okay.
It's due to the other private, it apparently,
How long has it been?
The finance office since 16, we have
Yes.
16, 17, and 18.
Correct. Okay.
So it's due from who to who at this point?
From the township to.
From the
township to the fire
district? Correct.
We are the fire district, yes.
Correct. And with the budget being done and elections coming up, I'd like to get the money in. This is to my taxpayers that I'm responsible for.
Do you know how much it is?
13,000, right? It was 26, 13, and 13?
Yeah, 13, and we don't know what 18 is yet.
Is there anything preventing the township from cutting a check to the fire district before the next council meeting, Dave?
No, I would hope that I can do it in the next few days. Yeah, I'm gonna reach out again and, because I looked into it and apparently it's been missed for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Could you report back to us at the next
I will.
meeting?
Sure.
Or by email
Or I can
when
email,
it goes out?
tell you that the check's been sent.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Argenti.
He works in finance.
Okay, that does it for the list, so now we'll go back to raising hands. So I'll go to first timers first. You already went, Mr. Lyon. Janice.
Yeah, that's good.
Miss Janice.
Miss Janice. I messed that up all sorts of ways. Let's see if I get this right.
Janice running 432 Trinity Avenue, Cornell Heights. Okay, I had came up for another thing, but I had said once before, the Army Corps of Engineers is totally useless. This is the third time they've been on that crap.
I don't know about
All right? I even have a booklet at home about Hamilton from the year 2000 where Mercer County was going to supposedly take over the dam and fix it, and that was, so no, waiting on that. And the other problem was Lawrence is the other border. And the one time we were going to do some dredging or something, Lawrence refused to help pay the bill because it says it was half and half because they're on one side of the creek and we're on the other side. So that's from days of back in the Pilgrims when we had all that stuff. Okay, I have some pictures to show you, which you can have, and I have my own set. Do I get them to you? You're quite welcome. This is a house, I took them today, around 4 o'clock, on Sweetbriar Avenue. It is not a house that was dropped from Fairbanks, Alaska. It is there on Sweetbriar. There is tons of snow and ice. There's water, and the lane where you see the white, that's how far the ice was out. And the reason her mailbox has icicles hanging off of it is because the car is going down Sweetbriar, hit it when it melts, and it hits, flies up and is on her mailbox. And she called, and it's going, they don't know where the water's coming from. That's the problem. The water has been there for weeks. It has never dried up. And it's coming down to my street, and of course it's freezing on my street, and we finally got the end of our street fixed this past year after having lost our transmission going in and out the street every year, and we don't want it to fall apart again. But this lady's afraid to go out and get her mail because there's all this ice. They don't know where the water's coming from. They called the township, they called Hamstat, they called our road department. Then she found, but it's a Mercer County street, so they called Mercer County. Mercer County came out, and where that line is was yesterday, and they moved the ice off the street and cleared her sidewalk, and they says it's coming from, they don't know where. So I was wondering whether we have any way to see, is Trenton Waterworks, are they leaking? Because at the end of the hill, when you come down to Sweetbriar, there's times where there's water there, and it's always a broken water pipe underneath the road. So I was wondering, is there any way that you can have the Trenton Waterworks or somebody go out there, even though it's a Mercer County road, but I mean, you look at it, I mean, it's been that way for a week, 2 weeks. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, like she says, she's afraid to go out. The neighbor next door has a little child. She's afraid to go out for fear she's gonna slip and drop her child. So, I mean, and they have to find out where this water's coming from. So if it is an underground leak, that they can fix it and get rid of it, because like she says, it's never been there before. The lady next door said she's on a water table or something or other, but she said she's always drained the water down her driveway and they've never had anything like this. So I told her that I would pass it by you people, that you would look into it and see if Trent Water Works or jump on Mercer County and say, somebody's gotta figure out why this water's there. Plus, it's not safe. It's that far out into the road, and people are coming down the hill, and they're trucking, you know, going to work, or going to the train station, or whatever, coming home from the train, especially coming home from the train station. I mean, they're not expecting to see ice in 40-degree temperatures here, you know, and it's all ice and snow, and they're gonna hit that, and there's gonna be a problem. Like I was turning into my street, luckily there's hardly anybody ever turning out, so I can swing real wide and miss the whole ice that's on the grate. Of course, that's cold and that keeps it frozen as well. So, yes.
I'll wait till you're done, so I want to use up your time.
Okay. And then the other question is kind of to Ralph. Okay, when the police like are just doing their cruising and they see something that, like, you know, like a litter or something like that, like, cause up on the hill, there's some garbage truck that dropped all this big pieces of cardboard and stuff and all, and or if you see like stuff that's like that, do they call that in or they
Absolutely.
don't call that in?
Dispatch and contact the proper authority.
Oh, okay, so if they see something that's out of sort, that they will call it in?
Sure.
Oh, okay, I was just making sure that, you know, that they do that. Because I'm thinking, you know, that was up there and I did call Hampstead and they said, of course, that's Mercer County. I love it. You know, that's Mercer County, so then you have to go to Mercer County, and of course, Mercer County's, no offense, really quick coming out to get it, because I said, what's gonna blow into the street during rush hour, and they came, I called, it was Friday, and they came on Tuesday, so it
Jen,
wasn't too bad.
the set of pictures you gave us, can, Mr. Kenny provide those to Mr. Will, like, are they for us to keep?
Yes,
So
they're
we
yours.
can-
I even put the address for the ladies, 411,
Okay.
on the back of it, Sweetbriar.
411?
Yeah, it's on the back of,
Yeah, I see it.
three of the
Okay.
pictures. And like I said, it runs from her house all the way down to my street, you know, and that's 3 houses down, and it's this snow and ice, and it's been there, and it's out in Sweetbriar. That's not good, because that road hauls, and like turning into my street, you have to turn in kind of quick, because those guys are coming or they'll push you through. Okay, so she greatly appreciate that. Thank you, and like I said, Army Corps of Engineers, forget them.
Mr. Andrew.
Ken Enderly, 5 Tilly Court. Mr. Anderson gets up here all the time, talks about things on consent agenda, then he goes off on wild tangents, and he's not stopped, like tonight. He went after Dave Kenny for budget, capital budget buying flowers. What's that got to do with the consent agenda? That's all, and he's not stopped, so I think he should be gavelled down when he starts.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else first timers? Mr. Clark.
Steve Clay, Wolfpack Road. Excuse me. I have some serious concerns about these charges. Conduct unbecoming a township employee, inability to perform duties, incompetency, inefficiency or failure to perform duties, theft, misappropriation of funds, fraud, forgery. When are these going to be addressed?
It was filed with the Division of Local Government. They today transferred it to the Office of Administrative Law, which is the normal course, and will be addressed in that proceeding.
Why would it go there?
Why would it go there?
Yeah.
That's, you have to file the complaint with the Division of Local Government Services involving a tenured employee, and then that was the director's decision, which is not unusual, to refer these to the Office of Administrative Law.
I'm talking about Todd Benzabango and Jeff Plunkett.
Todd Benzabango, Jeff Plunkett?
Yes.
I don't know what you're talking, what are you talking about there?
Of course he does.
Well, why haven't they been? Why aren't they getting any of this? They're saying that you charged for John Barrett.
Well, I'm not gonna get into the issues involving Mr. Barrett, they've been filed.
I'm not asking about John Barrett. I'm asking about Jeff Plunkett and Todd Benzabango.
There may be disciplinary charges pending, there may not be, that's not for me to discuss here.
Well, of course. when will you have it put in the Trentonian so we can read about it?
I haven't filed anything with the state of New Jersey against them.
So there may or may not be something done against him, but really you're just not doing anything still.
I'm not gonna answer that tonight.
Maybe we'll see in the Trentonian. I do have some other questions. Why do we still not have after-hours animal control coverage?
You don't have to have 24-hour animal control coverage. What we do have, however, is after hours, there are animal control officers on call. If they're not able to respond to the call, the police have access to the animal shelter, and they deal with it after hours.
On December 4th, the police responded to a call, 10:30 at night, dog tied to a signpost, its back covered in blood. They called for animal control, got nobody. They were out there for an hour and a half trying to get somebody from animal control. They called, obviously, Jeff Plunkett, they got nothing. They called the animal control officers, no answer. They called Trenton, they called Bordentown, they called East Windsor, they called everybody. No animal control came out for this dog covered in blood.
We had not budgeted in the past several years to have on-call officers for 24 hours, but I've been advised that we have no responsibility to provide 24-hour coverage for animal control, although we make an effort to do that with having individuals on call.
And who was on call?
They work through the list. Mr. Plunkett worked through a list to try to get somebody out to handle the situation.
Yeah, that didn't work. So this dog was taken to North Star by the police officer an hour and a half later. Why was North Star told to euthanize that dog the next day?
I don't know anything about that. I doubt they were told to euthanize. I think they would make their own determination.
No, they had a surgical consult. They were told by Time Vets they go to euthanize the dog. The dog had a prolapsed uterus. Essentially, she needed to be spayed.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
Steve, what date was that? December?
December 4th. Why has the township paid the vet bill for Todd Bensavengo's own dog?
I don't know anything about that. If you can show me that we did. I know he adopted a dog from the shelter.
He did, on April 1st. On May 16th, the dog went to Dr. Carter, and the township was billed for it. This was after he adopted the dog and waived his own adoption fee.
And I have copies of those. We have copies of that.
Right. So I'm curious why Todd Bensavengo was charging the township for his own dog. Why he seems to think he has discretion to charge shelter fees whichever way he wants. Not just for himself. These things are set by ordinance. He frequently waives or changes the fees as he sees fit. Would this not constitute theft of township services?
I will certainly look into it.
Okay. Now,
I'll bring it back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. Anybody else for the first one? Yes, sir.
Adam Solomon, Edgebrook Road. I'm currently a student at Rutgers University, Camden. Just to clarify on the zip code issue with Robbinsville, if it's agreed that Robbinsville takes zip code 08691, just to clarify, we would not be affected in terms of any change in government or any provision of services in the area, correct?
Correct, Adam. So this would be like if you went on Amazon or Target.com and you put in your address or something like that. When you put in the zip code, a lot of times it would pre-fill for you the town that pops up first, right? Right now, that would pre-fill as Trek. This would change it so it would pre-fill essentially as Robbinsville.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any else? Yes, in the back. Ms. Musha.
Elaine Usual, Marshall Avenue in Hamilton. I've attended 10 of these meetings and I have submitted quite a few OPRA requests. The last one that I requested, this was the answer that I got, and I would like to know if it's appropriate. Ms. Muschel, in reference to your OPRA request submitted to this office, please be advised it has been reported to this office from the Department of Public Works. There is no responsive records. This request is considered closed.
What was your request for, ma'am? If you share.
This was actually the third time that I requested this information. This is request for the correct information as follows. You supplied me with an email dated 10/31/18 with a placement date of 8/15/18 for the handicap sign for 102 Marshall. The ordinance was not even placed on the agenda with council until August of 2018 for the first reading. So therefore, I would like to know the exact date when the handicap sign for 102 Marshall Avenue was placed, and I know when it was September 19th, one day after council passed that 5-0, and who installed it knowing that the ordinance had just been passed but not been signed by the mayor. So this was the third time that I had requested it. My feeling was that the answer from Public Works that there are no responsive records is incorrect. I'm sure that there are records kept, and then they closed my request. So I don't think it's appropriate. I'm here to ask your opinion because
So you're looking for a work order that would have been done for your neighbor's house for the handicap sign, am I understanding that correctly?
correct, because it came before council first at your August 18th meeting. It was passed at the September 18th meeting. And September 19th, when I came out in the morning, while the papers were still laying on Ms. Orr's desk, someone came out and placed the sign. So my question was, who did it and by whose authority before anyone had authority to do it?
Dave, are there work orders that Public Works would have to get in order to, put a sign up and paint lines or something like that, if you know?
I'm not really sure. I'm assuming that since they're involved with, since the police initiate the ordinances, that maybe they follow those and get copied on them. That's why they would go out pretty quickly, but I'd have to ask Mr. Carruthers what his process is.
You authorized
Sure.
it, and I'm sure that there is a paper trail, but that paper trail is not being made available to me.
Can you send the OPRA request that you made to Mr. Kenny, and I will also take a look at it?
Yes,
Okay?
yes.
If you could email it to him, so.
I
see
will
the answer
before I
to the
leave
request.
tonight. I believe I have two of them. I made a
Okay.
copy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Michelle. Anybody else? First.
Dawn Musiani, Hammond Court, Hamilton, New Jersey. If I may respectfully ask Mr. Kenny, what measurement is used on if you keep looking into charges or file them? What measurement do you use? Whether charges keep getting looked into or they get filed? Yeah, or they get filed. I'm in no way sarcastic, or I'm just asking. I don't know the ins and outs of the animal shelter. I don't pretend to. I don't know what the workers, each of them, do. I just keep hearing a lot of, we'll look into it, and then when I feel Mr. Barrett was like a whirlwind. We got this, we got you, he was filed with charges and suspended. I am not in any way saying you should look at this person, suspend that person, I just don't understand how this was like a whirlwind that it came in, he gave his statement, he found in my eyes, he gave a statement, he found discrepancies in the financial issues of the town. And within a 2-week period, he had charges filed against him and suspended. He brought up charges himself. I am not saying they are right or wrong. He brought up charges himself that were never looked into. So I just don't want to know the measurement of what deems you can look into charges or you can file charges.
Well, generally, I don't file charges against anybody but a director. It would have to be, everyone else, it would be their director or some superior that would file the charges and would go through the personnel office for any disciplinary charges. The only time I would really get involved is.
And I'm not saying you personally, I'm
Yeah.
asking overview.
Oh, well,
Like I'm saying, so he brought up charges. And that
Yeah, and-
just
and-
dropped like a lead balloon.
No, to my knowledge, they haven't been dropped, the charges that you filed.
Okay.
They're pending a hearing, and then just as I filed charges against Mr. Barrett, they're pending a hearing.
Oh, okay, so all of them are getting the same, I just get
They're
confused
different
with.
tracks because a tenured officer such as Mr. Barrett, they have to go through the state.
And animal shelter, who's ever looking into what's happening there, that can get looked into, that doesn't have a fast track? I'm just asking because I just keep hearing all of these same,
Well, there've been a lot of allegations made. I heard some tonight that I certainly want to look into.
Look into,
First, I
okay.
heard of these, and I'm gonna follow up on those.
thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Anybody else for the first time this evening? Seeing none, any second timers? Mr. Anderson. I got almost excited for a second.
Based on the information that Mr. Clegg presented this evening, I'm wondering if Mr. Kenny's gonna move to suspend Todd Benzavenga without pay tomorrow pending investigation.
No comment on that.
Well, yeah.
Mr. Engel.
Okay, back to my master plan.
3 minutes this time.
All right, so I feel the master plan is extremely important. I think it's something that is in dire missing from Hamilton Township because I don't know what the vision is or what directions, but there's a lot of areas. You got Clockner Road and Whitehorse, that whole corner over there. You have the old Congolium site. There's just a lot of areas that I know a lot of people may have lots of questions on. What the overall vision is, what should go there, what is the vision of the administration and or really the mayor. The mayor should have a very clear cut of what she wants to see and what she wants to happen and what it wants to look like. And it doesn't mean anybody who walks through a door you just say yes to. It just means that may not fit. But we need to know what that is. The other reason for the master plan and potential changings in zoning also allows funds from the state. So if it's a revitalization zone or rehabilitation, there is grants that are available from the state that either the businesses and or the township can apply. So it's extremely important. I think that we should, really kind of look at that coming up this year. But I really will go back to again. I just think that there's a lot of questions that as citizens have. Set aside all the issues that are going on in the administration, but just the overall what's happening in the township and where it's going. So much time seems to be now being spent on this whole administration problems, but what really direction is our township going? I've been here for 3 generations, but where's my son and potentially his son or daughter going to be? I mean, it's an issue that if it doesn't get resolved, and the other problem that I personally just have, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but when do we get to hear from the mayor?
Never.
The mayor. We hear from you, Dave. We hear from Mr. Flynn, but you never hear from her other than a press release, a text message, an email. When will she either come here to council or when will she maybe hold her own forum? I think it needs to happen. It needs to happen. I mean, after all, it is an election year, so do we have to just wait until someone's running against her and then asks her for a debate? And then even that'll be blown off because we know most incumbents don't feel that they have to show up to debate. But it's important and it's frustrating. It's very frustrating that a mayor can't show up and answer questions. She should take a seat right between one of yous and say, I'm here. Ask me some questions. Let me answer those questions rather than constantly funneling over to Dave. I almost feel bad for Dave, because it just seems like nothing ever goes anywhere. And we don't even know who's really running the town, because we never hear from her. So I'd like the written invitation for a council meeting to be sent to her, and I'd like an answer. No, I'm not gonna attend, and why I'm not gonna attend. I just think
there was a written invitation sent to the mayor by me. She did respond saying she wasn't going to attend based on her interpretation of the Faulkner Act.
And I will err on the side of fine. But now the question then turns into Dave. Can you request for her to have something for the public to talk to her?
Well, she's always very accessible.
Okay,
People
all right.
come in all the time.
So hold on, Dave, hold on. She's very accessible. So can we schedule a forum in a town hall?
I'd have to talk to her, that's,
So can you ask her, so the next
I don't
council meeting
recall,
I ask,
I don't
want an
recall
answer.
a mayor ever in the history of Hamilton Township coming to a council meeting, to be honest with you. I'm quite certain Jack Bradbury.
I hate to bring this up, but I go to, because of my business, I attend lots of council meetings. And I can tell you, last year, Dave was at a number of them at Robbinsville, and he sits amongst the council. And there's been a few times where the person would address the business administrator, and he quickly interject with, I got that, and he answers the question. It just funnels it through, and he takes on the one-on-one conversations of, why you doing this? What's your plan for that? The door is open, but it's not open. You have to understand that. It is not open. So the question is have her set up something. A lot of citizens are asking for it. I don't care what anybody has done in the past. It's what she needs to do. She needs to have something, an open forum, something. If you guys in the administration think that she's wonderful and she's great, then why then help the rest of everybody else? And I'm not the only guy. Have something where she can then ask questions right off the cuff. It's a simple thing. I don't know that answer. I'll get back to you. But she's got to know some answer for something amongst how many people.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Ms. Firestone.
Excellent.
I'll get you. No. Ladies first. I'll get you next.
I'll go with it.
I don't know if she's going to yield her time. Do a duet.
Terry from Hamilton, and I was not gonna come up again, but this gentleman encouraged me to because I've researched the Faulkner Act, and you're absolutely, no, that's okay. She's absolutely incorrect. Mayor can attend any council meeting, she just cannot vote. Unless you are replacing a council member and there is a tie, then she has the deciding vote, and that's per the Faulkner Act. And you know I do good research. I may not be a nice person sometimes, but I do good research.
Mr. Van Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mark Van Wagner, still at 235 Anson Avenue.
Greatest Orange Street.
So, by the way, I would have felt bad for David Kenny, and I appreciate that. If it hadn't been for what I saw happen to CFO John Barrett, I have no sympathy. I have no empathy. I actually have anger. Listen, I'm reading in the paper information, personal information about our CFO that, from what I can tell, was leaked to him or given to him by administration. Now, maybe not. And I'm also reading in the Hamilton Township Policy Handbook where it says that personnel files cannot be disclosed. They have to be remain confidential, and that includes disciplinary action. So, township disclosure of employee information, the township will not disclose personal information without your consent unless required by law or court order. And yet somehow or another, an entire list of charges made it into the Trentonian. Now, I was under the impression that it was actually given to the Trentonian by the administration. I could be wrong. Maybe it was leaked, in which case somebody should be held accountable for leaking that information. But that's bad business, and it's bad for Hamilton Township. And we're an embarrassment. We've heard it here tonight. We're like, why would the mayor come here? She's gonna face a battering ram of questions and anger, like council does, because she's not here. In fact, I think I remember reading in a paper recently, some guy wrote and said council has to hear it because the mayor won't open her door and take a town meeting. You guys may have read that article too. Letter to the editor, I think. So the mess that we have in front of us isn't because of partisan politics. It's because of bad business. It's because of bad government. This cannot continue. We have a CFO, a good guy. I think when it's all said and done, I feel comfortable by saying that he'll be vindicated and he'll be back. I don't feel that many of the individuals in this township and the administration will, end up in the same way, but, yet we heard a lot about the animal shelter, and I feel the aggravation and frustration of people that know that we've seen evidence of illegal and improper activity by employees at the animal shelter, including an individual responsible as the director for that animal shelter. And we heard Mr. Kenny indicate that, that the directors handle the internal. You wouldn't be disclosing it to us anyway, maybe to the paper. But certainly the director who has oversight for that and failed miserably in this instance should have been held accountable. And I would certainly be expecting to read about that in the paper and hear about the placement on off-duty suspension. Look, this isn't the way to run a government. This is bad. And at some point in time, the mayor needs to sit down with council and needs to start, pull down the battery, pull down the wall and have an interactive relationship and fix what's going on here, because there's way too much bad blood. It's costing us a fortune, and it's going to cost us even more. We shouldn't be battling out our differences in a court of law. It seems like that's where we head on almost everything we do anymore, and I hope it stops.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else first or second time? Janice. I learned my lesson the first time.
Okay, it's not a good God. All these tall people. 432 Trinity Avenue, Cornell Heights. I know this is going to get some people upset, but I have been coming to council since 2004, back in the days of the Pilgrims. All right? I enjoy council. At least I did until all this hubbub was going on here. You found out about your township, you found out what was going on, other people's problems in their neighborhood. You go, oh gee, I know what I have to do in case it comes to my neighborhood, and stuff like that. And I think I've missed 5 meetings in 14 years. No mayor has ever shown up. Not ever. People would say to me, what does the mayor do? I says, I don't know. The council does everything. I says, I assume she gives you the agenda, you guys vote on it, you guys are like making the laws for the township. That's what I assumed. Because I said, no mayor has ever shown up. And since I came here in 2004 when we were fighting the transit village and all that stuff. But no, none of them has ever come. I just assume she passes stuff down to you, and that's how you got your agenda, you vote on it, and you guys are like the ones that are running the township here. But so that if they're upset about the mayor not coming, no one has ever come in 14 years. So that's how it's been. Whether it's protocol or what, but that's how it was. So from the Pilgrims on.
Just because we want to start that way.
Yes, ma'am.
Doesn't mean it's right.
Lisa Quattro, Better Line Avenue, I'm on her hood. I just want to say, there's a first time for everything. Doesn't matter if no mayor's ever showed up, we could have one now showed up. And my issue is, there needs to be something done about that. That's why I asked the question about the shelter, where that medicine's held, where all those supplies are held, because if they still have access to all this and stuff was missing and nothing was done in the past, then we're gonna have the same problem that we've had, no data, the data's not put in electronically. We're gonna have the same problem. I mean, I had an issue with the dog being put down that I was a stray that I brought to the township. Never had a problem with the township. There was people there every day the 7 days wanted to adopt that dog. 7 days that dog was put down. I called the mayor. She never, ever returned my call. Ever. She said, you need to go talk to the head of the shelter. I did. He was a very nasty, disgusting man. I would never want to admit to do business with him. So I came to the council about it. And it seems like ever since that happened over a year and a half ago, something's been going on with the township shelter. And it needs to be done. Too many animals are dying that don't need to die. Too many people are getting away with illegal action that should not be getting away with. And it needs to be looked into, and it needs to be taken care of. Our tax dollars pay for it. We deserve an answer.
Thank you, Lisa. Anybody else first or second time before I move it? Mr. Clark, second time. I'll get you next time.
Steve Clay, Wolfpack Road. Do we know how many employees are at the shelter now? Is it still 9?
I'll look into that.
think?
Is it less than 9?
Five,
What do you think?
we have 5 ACOs, 2 are part-time. We have at least 5 cleaning personnel, 3 of whom are part-time, 4 of whom are
5 cleaning
part-time.
personnel.
And 4 are part-time, yes.
Okay. So why, with all those cleaning personnel, would we spend $8,000 on disposable litter boxes?
It's a mass order, and then you can dispose of them. Yeah, it's a mass order, you have to use them all the time.
Why not just, you got cleaning personnel. This is the only shelter in the area that buys disposable litter boxes. $8,000 worth of them.
I'd have to find out, I don't know if Dr. Bowen was involved in
No,
that.
she was not.
Okay.
This was long before Dr. Bowden. There was $7,500 spent in February, so another $500 spent in June on disposable litter boxes.
Well, you're raising, if we don't need disposable litter boxes, it's cheaper to do something, do it another way.
Well, if we're paying 5 people for cleaning, then yeah, that seems to defeat the purpose. We also spent $440 to buy 500 dog leashes. We don't get that many dogs in 2 years. What do we need 500 leashes for? They're reusable.
I don't know, I'll look into it.
Right? So, I wanted to go back to Todd Bensavengo's theft from the township, starting with him housing his own personal dog at the shelter.
Mr. Flake, rather than discuss this in public, I'd be happy to sit down with you and have you show me what you have, because if they're.
Well, we've already seen that
If you're
before.
alleging criminal activity, you know,
Well,
that certainly, I would certainly refer to the police.
Oh, I've done that, so, and they're obviously looking at it. But I have a different point to make with this. So he's housed his own dog at the shelter, we've all seen that. Which basically deprives a shelter animal of the space in the new shelter, deprives them of the care. Costs us time to clean that kennel as he comes and goes. He's waived his own adoption fee. He's waived fees for people he just felt like waiving fees for. He's charged fees that aren't set by ordinance. And all this money, all these resources that he's stealing, that is money that could be paid as vet care for these animals. And we've seen many times the complaint that we can't take care of that animal because it costs too much money. $8,000 on litter boxes. Cardboard boxes. You can get them for free. Walk by and ShopRite. These are animals that are dying because Todd Bensavengo is mismanaging the shelter. He's stealing from the township. Jeff Plunkett is on board with that, and you're doing nothing.
This is the first allegation I've ever heard of somebody.
Not true at all.
And if you refer to law enforcement, that's where it should be.
Law enforcement doesn't manage our spending.
Thank you, Mr. Frank.
What's that?
Law enforcement doesn't manage our spending.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Mr. Rhodes.
Good evening. Nick Barozzi, FMBA President, Local 284. I don't like to bring up about the animal shelter because everybody behind me normally does. But within the past week, we've had 2 fires after hours. We've had one deceased animal and we've had 1 injured animal. Animal control did not come out. The police department tried to call them to come out to take care of these animals. So what is the fire department supposed to do after hours if we have an injured animal or we have a deceased animal to take care of?
Well,
I don't know.
the police were involved, I think the police responded. And obviously, if the council decides it's necessary to have 24-hour care, that'll be very expensive. To have people on call all the time, we'd have to have standby.
Well, we're not talking emergency or 24-hour care. We're talking about an emergency that happens to an animal that somebody could be on call.
You're contradicting yourself a little bit, Dave, because you're saying someone is supposed to be on call, and then you're saying
They
we
reach
can't
out,
afford
yeah,
to have
the
someone on
police
call.
Double
typically-
speak, Dave.
Well, they're not paid to be on call. We have sometimes when you have a 24-hour operation, people get standby pay each week that they're supposed to stay at home and be on standby. We don't have that for the animal shelter presently. something we have to look at.
So they would get OT if they got called out
Well, they
on a
would
job?
standby pay even if they don't ever get called out.
Under
Now
the
they
current
would get
arrangement?
overtime, yeah, they would get overtime when they come out, yes.
So, I'm sure you know we have a subcommittee looking into all the issues and we'll provide, policy recommendations and ordinance recommendations as part of the report.
And I have to say, I did, when I heard about this, I emailed you, Mr. Kenny, right? I think I
Yes.
copied all the council if I'm not mistaken. And the answer was, if there's an emergency, it goes to Plunkett. Plunkett then goes on his list of who's on call, and he's supposed to make that call. That's the way it's supposed to work, correct? So, what actually happened? Was Plunkett not called?
And I think there was one instance he was called, he did not have his phone with him, it was like, was it early in the morning, was it 2 in the morning, or was it
Oh, they were both after hours, late night fires.
late night, yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's this particular one, I understand that, my recollection is the one dog wasn't injured, at least, it was fine, and the owner came and got it the next day, from the shelter.
So overall, Jeff Plunkett is responsible. And he is responsible to make sure that the policy and procedure are in place so things like this don't happen. I'm sure it doesn't happen, a lot, I don't know, you would tell me, but it's on his shoulders, right?
That's what
Correct?
he told me, that he would get the call, yes. Police dispatch would
Do we
call
have a
him.
written policy?
I
Well,
don't know.
I believe that Mr. Plunkett, being the director and then also being a health officer and having job responsibilities, should step up and write a policy in place that the police have, that the fire department has, that council has, and everyone has, so everybody knows exactly how it's supposed to work. I don't think it's that difficult. Can you please have him write a policy and give us an answer within this week when he expects to have that done?
If there's not one done, I'll have it sent to you already, because I know that the police may have the policy on it, because they have access to the animal shelter.
And that's fine, if the police has it, fine, that should be in the overall policy, laying it out very clearly, and these firefighters should have a clear understanding of what the procedure is. Okay?
Anything else, Mr. Rhodes?
Yeah, just one other thing. We all know consolidation's going on. Everything else is kind of put that to the side a little bit. We're negotiating with the administration on trying to get a contract for the township and the little minor setback with the local governments, local finance. But with everything going on and everything getting put into the paper with disciplinary actions and everything else, what guarantee, like I have to answer to my membership just like you have to answer to the mayor. What guarantee does my membership have that everything that's going disarray in this town isn't gonna happen with the fire department? We haven't even been taken over yet. And we have members asking us, with everything going on, are we gonna be okay? Are we gonna be good in the town? What guarantee do we have from the administration that it's gonna be, with everything going on? It's just crazy. Every day something in the paper, there's at least 3 articles of something going on. Somebody getting disciplined, personnel issues out there, which shouldn't be out there. It's,
We're proceeding, I'm hoping at the next negotiation session, you're gonna propose the draft contract that I requested a couple of negotiation sessions ago, and I know you gave me some parts of the contract, so hopefully you'll have a contract, and we can start to review that and negotiate.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
thank you. It's no guarantee.
No, you put it back when you asked.
Anybody else?
I want to elaborate a little bit. Dave Kruger, president of the firefighters in Hamilton, just to piggyback what Nick was saying, and I think the answer kind of wasn't what we were looking for that question. The question was specifically with what's going on with Mr. Barrett and personal issues being put into the newspaper. Our membership, and as Nick told you, I'll say the same thing, we're approached, and specifically what they ask us is, if we become a township fire department and we're under this administration and we do something wrong, are our personnel files then going to be put into the newspaper as Mr. Barrett's were? Issues, personnel issues, things like that. That's the question that Nick directed, and I think it has nothing to do with negotiations. It's more along the lines of, what do we have to look forward to? Because I panic too, I panic for our guys. It bothers us when we think and we see how actual employees of this town are being treated, and then we're potentially gonna become employees of this town. It's scary, and I hope that you can answer it that way rather than just that we're negotiating, because that really has nothing to do with the question that Nick asked or that I led to, so. I can answer anything if you need it, but I don't know if that helps.
Well, all I can say is, Mr. Barrett, it's an unusual situation. That's not internal discipline. It has to go to the state. The state law requires that it be filed with the Department of Community Affairs and the municipal clerk.
Does it
I've
require that
never
it goes
seen-
to the paper?
I've never seen a disciplinary action ever filed with the municipal clerk. It's similar to filing a lawsuit then, which is public information. And now it's in the Office of Administrative Law, where everything is public information.
So someone else put that in the paper then?
No, I'm not saying that, but it's a public document. You know, we got a lot of public documents floating around out there, it seems, right now. But this is not internal discipline. This has to go to the state, and that's the state.
Well, we're civil service employees also, so we have to do the same thing, but.
Well, Mr. Barrett is not a civil service employee, but.
Or to the state, I should say.
It would be, well, it initiates here, and then major discipline, you can appeal to administrative law.
Okay, I just wanna make, just so the council has it on record, that we are curious to how that might go about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Anybody else, Mr. Rhodes, for a second? You want a second?
Yeah, I just want to clarify the whole the contract thing. You never asked us for a full contract proposal draft. We've given you contract, we've been in negotiations, I don't want to get into negotiations, but when we've asked you guys to come back to us with something that you want from the firemen, you've absolutely given us nothing, gave us zero. So I just need to make that statement that it wasn't back on the firemen to give you a contract draft. We've had decent or okay negotiations, I would say, but the administration has never given us anything. The only thing that you have given us is when we asked for health care and when we asked for the employee handbook. That was it, nothing else.
Well, I'm not gonna negotiate in public, but I'm not gonna make an offer until I have a demand.
I didn't ask you to make an offer, okay? I didn't ask you to make an offer.
Anybody else from, Mr. Clegg, you've come here 2 times already. Ms. Bruno, did you want to come?
Yes.
Everything's funny. You think he sleeps at night?
Joanne Bruno, 35 Argonne Avenue. Mr. Kenny, do you know if there has been a standard operating procedures created by the shelter?
I know I saw a draft. I think they were basically, I'm not sure if they were completed yet or not.
Would they not include in there what would happen in situations that Nick brought up about the fire department?
They may or may not. You know, there's no requirement to have SOPs, there's no requirement to have SOPs, but we have SOPs.
Well,
We're putting them together.
I know there may not be a requirement, but it's good business to have standard operating procedures so everyone knows what the rules are and you have better management of the shelter that way. Just makes
I
sense
agree with you,
to have it.
that's why we're having SOPs prepared.
Well, when are they, I mean, how long is this going to take?
I thought I saw that they were completed recently. I sent drafts, I guess, to some of the councilmen, and, but I'm not sure what the final status is, whether they were signed off, because we had Dr. Bowden reviewing them as well.
Okay, so would it be possible for you to send me an email when you find out when that is going to be finalized?
Yeah, once it's finalized, sure, and I'll advise the council.
So they're going to email me?
I don't know if I have your email address, but.
I can provide you with that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bruno. Anybody else, first or second time, going once, going twice? Ms. Schirmer.
Where you going? I gotta get back to work. Work. You know, work for a living.
I need to read this, because I'm at my wit's end with, what I'm witnessing in Hamilton. And as a taxpayer, I'm fed up. This is in the Trentonian article that came out that disclosed John Barrett's, discipline action. Hiring a high-profile attorney to help preserve his job, Barrett presents himself as a good boy whistleblower and the victim of retaliation. No, this is public, this is public.
I know, but I just wanna say.
This is public.
You're doing this against my advice.
So what? It's public. It was in
I
the
am reading what's in the paper. And you know what's most interesting about reading what's in the paper? It's a personal issue, he would say, but the business administrator officially disclosed the 10-year complaint to the Trentonian without fuss on Friday. So you're trying to tell us we can't talk, which I understand. However, you took it upon yourself to provide the Trentonian with all the disciplinary actions that were taken against Mr. Barrett. I like to everybody here deserves to understand, why did you do that?
Well, okay.
We have not seen the complaint.
We received
Not
a
true.
call from the Trentonian today that Mr. Barrett has filed a lawsuit. We have not seen that.
Not
But it was
true.
obviously given to Trentonian.
Not true.
I will say this. Having sat here for many years, watching what's happening in this town, listening to a firefighter come up and express concern as to, hey, can this happen to us? Can our personal information be put out there for everybody to see? Having employees working who are walking on eggshells because they're thinking, oh my God, am I next? Oh my God, this is a hostile work environment. Mr. Kenny, in my opinion, you overstepped your line as a business administrator. And your conduct, in my opinion, and I believe in a lot of people's opinion, was beneath your office. And you know what? No, I'm not done. I am not done speaking.
I know, but I'm just,
No,
I
I'm
wanna
not done
state for the
speaking.
record
I
that
am
you're
not
doing
done
this against
speaking.
council's advice.
I am doing it as
And
me.
this
okay?
suit is against the Township of Hamilton as well as individuals, and we have not seen the allegations. So again, I'm just going to ask you to
I
please
understand.
refrain
I
from
understand.
commenting because
I
you could
understand.
be jeopardizing the Township's case and position in this matter.
Mr. Kenny, you really should resign. You really should step down. You have crossed the line. You have seriously crossed the line. I'm sitting up here having to vote on things that I have zero confidence in. How can I do my job? I should never feel this way. And you have made you and the mayor, because the mayor is an embarrassment, you have made an embarrassment of Hamilton Township.
Why?
And you can sit there and look at me and make all these things, and everybody can think what they want. I'm a taxpayer, I'm an investor in this town, I'm a stakeholder in this town, and what is happening is embarrassing. You really should step down. You've caused nothing but trouble since you've been here. The relationships are being ruined. Look what's happening with our fire, look what's happening with our animal shelter. The fact nothing's happening with our animal shelter. I'd like the mayor to come up and actually address that. What are we paying her for? I'm done. I am done having to put up with these really embarrassing situations. You really should consider resigning. I think you're over your head and treating employees the way you and the mayor and Marty Flynn and everybody else who apparently is involved is treating employees is not acceptable. It's going against everything in that handbook. Do you not see it? I guess you don't see it. It doesn't matter. I have to express this because I am first and foremost a taxpayer, okay? And I'm embarrassed by what's happening in Hamilton Township, and you really should submit your paper of resignation. And that's all I really have to say tonight. Thank you.
Councilwoman Schirmer.
I disagree with you as far as Mr. Kenny resigning, but
course you
I
do.
want to thank everybody for coming out. Mr. Engel, I know you brought up a good point about the mayor, leading the town hall meetings. I'm in favor of that. I mean, if she wants to do that. As far as her coming to a council meeting, to my knowledge, I've never seen a mayor come to any council meetings, whether it's Bradford, Gordon, or whatever. But I agree with what you're saying. I mean, there are concerns that this, I don't know if this is the right setting. For that.
Blaze a new path.
Anyway, hopefully we can move forward with the fire consolidation. There's, another subcommittee meeting soon. You got my email, right?
Yeah,
I'll be away
yeah.
from the
You-
20-something,
you-
30th.
I was good all those days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So hopefully that will be the right direction. But anybody have a great night.
Thank you, Councilman Carabas.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I have one update. In our prior council meeting, we discussed Cornell Heights and some of the traffic flow that was going through some of the residential streets. Just to give an update, just from the county side, I spoke to our county engineer, George Fallett, on a couple issues. One was the intersection of Whitehead and Sweetbriar. That intersection is under a study right now from DVRPC, an entity that looks into traffic flow, also provides grants for some on the federal side, but in this specific incident, they're looking at that intersection to improve that intersection about 500 feet from the intersection on Sweetbriar to the bridge, Route 1 bridge, all the way over to the railroad bridge on Whitehead. That study should be completed soon, probably in February or March, I was told. In addition to that, I was happy to see, thanks Dave, that we ended up proceeding with a study on those residential roads that are run perpendicular to Sweetbriar. So that will be conducted. Rich Williams is moving forward with that study to take a look at. In doing that study, what I mentioned to the council members, you're also going to find that you need to provide an alternative route for the truck flow. So that's going to be something that's discussed and part of the study that's going to be put forth by the township to the state. In addition to that, the third piece for that Cornell Heights area and the traffic at that at the Sandalwood and I believe it was Sweetbriar Sandalwood intersection. I had requested, after speaking with our the county engineer George Fallett, to there was mention at that last council meeting about a right-hand turn coming down the hill on Sweetbriar onto Sandalwood. A letter was submitted by the township, and the county engineer was interested in looking forward to receiving that letter and then pursuing the possibility of making a right turn lane at that intersection. He's going to evaluate and talk to his supervisor and see if that's a possibility. They're going to take a look at that not intersection, but just where Sandalwood meets Sweetbriar. So that was just a progress report I wanted to provide. I'll also get some more information when that becomes available, but just, yeah, no problem, no problem. So, thank you all for coming out this evening.
Mr. Carabelli, I just wanted to add after the meeting on the 8th, the reorganization meeting, when this was discussed, I said I would contact the traffic consultant for the town, which I did. And he basically confirmed that the traffic study is outside of our jurisdiction, so it would be the county or state that normally would require it. But he did also indicate that one of the things we have to consider is an alternative traffic if we are successful in having some of those roads, if not all of them, closed. So he confirmed basically
What I was saying, okay. Thank you.
Councilman Todd.
So I share residents' concerns over developments since our last council meeting. I'm calling on this council to hire a lawyer to investigate some of the allegations that we've seen in the paper over the past couple of weeks. I'd like for us to put out a request for proposals in order to do that, in order to investigate legally what is within our power, what possible ordinances we can introduce in order to prevent these kinds of things from happening ever again.
So when you say investigate, you mean the allegations and also potentially the township closure and things of that nature?
Correct.
Connecting with the purchasing department.
We can start looking at the council is without power to hire an attorney. This is a new decision that came down in Bourbon County. But I would certainly not be averse to the township through the council hiring an attorney to prosecute the tender charges.
We're talking about, my understanding is we're talking about hiring, much like the state is doing with the governor right now, and retain attorneys to look into allegations that have been made and better inform the council, not just on the town's legal exposure, right, and if there's any, but also to make policy recommendations and ordinance recommendations. And I think an independent attorneys, and we only have one attorney right now, so I know Mr. Balance probably up to his eyeballs and stuff too. I think an independent attorney looking into a variety of those subjects, looking into allegations made on both sides, I think
We could discuss those, obviously, if Mr. Barrett's filed suit, the joint insurance fund will retain counsel to defend that.
Sure.
And,
I'm talking about an internal investigation and make sure we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing, that make sure the town's following its own procedures, its own policies, its own ordinances, and to see whether things need to be updated or changed too.
we can talk about that, it's pretty amorphous what we're talking about right now, so you and I can talk about that.
Can we talk about it now?
Can you provide me the Bergen County case too, because we just hired an attorney to help with the shelter investigation.
Yeah, and I understand that, this is, somebody, I think Bruce Darby showed it to me right before we left.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I'll get that.
Anything else? So let me address some of the easy things I want to talk about first. Bad weather coming this weekend, so please be careful.
Especially on
The
Hamilton
Martin
roads.
Luther King event, the town's Martin Luther King event is this Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Obviously, the weather is supposed to potentially be bad that evening, so I imagine if there's a cancellation or anything like that, it'll be posted on the town website. But it's a great event. I unfortunately can't make it that evening, but it's a great event, so if you can, please go to that. Board of Health. We, as a township and as a council, are legally and technically the township's Board of Health. This is something that's been discussed, and we're looking forward to moving and having a first meeting maybe in February to have the Board of Health meetings as we're required to do. So look for that too. Basically, we'd either be at the start or in the middle of the meeting, we'd adjourn as council, go into Board of Health, and then reconvene back. So Terry Pfeiffer's got more information than I do on it. So if you have questions, obviously you talk to me too, because she's got a lot of questions on it. Next council meeting is Tuesday, February 5th. Same time, same place. I want to thank everybody for your patience, for your cooperation. We have tried to put in reforms, and I think they've worked, and I appreciate that from everybody. I know there's a lot of frustration in the crowd tonight, and I appreciate that. But I want to just thank you all for being respectful of the people who are talking, the council members, and everybody else. As it pertains to what's happened over the last 2 weeks, I have to say I'm very disappointed. And this is personal for me because 6 months ago or so, the mayor released publicly a claim that was made against 3 people who sit up on this dais. And that was done in contravening the township's policy, and she put that out publicly. And I obviously didn't appreciate that, but I understand that I signed up for this, and there's gonna be potentially games played with me, and that is what it is. You know, I have thick skin. But I appreciate the concerns of firefighters who are looking now, especially young guys, who are looking now and for the first time potentially questioning whether they want consolidation to move forward. And that's very disheartening to me. The subcommittee has put a lot of time, effort, and dedication into getting that forward, and we'll move forward with the state and solving any issues that exist and work with the state to resolve those. But it's very disheartening to me to hear, and I completely understand people's concerns and fears for their jobs, for their safety, for what their family may have to be exposed to. And it's very disheartening to me personally on that. I'm not going to comment on anything regarding personnel matters or anything like that. So for tonight, that's where I'm going to leave it. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you Tuesday, February 10th.
Can you put this this in my bag for me?